Chapter 174. No problem. Senior sister. Yang Chun replied with a smile, and then cupped his hands at Gong Sunling. Congratulations, senior sister. Gong Sunling reached foundation establishment a few years earlier than Yang Chun. In the second year after Yang Chun entered the Immortal Fallen Abyss, she had already reached foundation establishment. She was also considered to have a strong foundation in the Qi refining stage. At the time of the gathering of the Heavenly Ladder, Gong Sunling was still at the level of the 6th layer of the Qi refining stage, but after the gathering of the Heavenly Ladder, within a short period of 2 years, she broke through all the way and entered the foundation stage. This was originally the cultivation path of Gong Sunling from Yang Chen's previous life. At this moment, it coincided with Yang Chen's memory. However, Yang Chen knew that all the tragedies in the future would not happen. With Yang Chen around, he would never allow those things to happen in the past. Originally, Yang Chen said that he would wait for Gong Sunling in the Immortal Fallen Abyss, but now he came out 3 years ahead of schedule. Gong Sunling naturally got the pill she needed. Shang Wanfeng has been in the intersect for 10 years. Wang Yuan also entered the intersect at the same time as Gong Sunling. For the time being, they were still in the early stage of the foundation stage, and they were still in the stage of laying the foundation. After this stage, they would also go out to experience. Both of them were very happy to be able to wait for Yang Chun when Yang Chun entered the sect. A lot of things did not need to be said so clearly, as long as everyone knew it in their hearts. Now, the 4 of them were purely out of friendship or brotherhood. The reason why Yang Chun wanted to return to Chunyang Palace after his rebirth was not only because of his master, but also because of these fellow disciples. Although there were still a few fellow disciples that he had not met yet, he believed that there would be countless opportunities in the future. The 4 of them led Yang Chun and his 4 servants directly into the gate and walked toward a hall in Chunyang Palace. That hall was not the most majestic, but it was directly opposite the gate. It appeared very dignified. Above the gate hung a horizontal board, and on it were written the words Chen Hall in flamboyant calligraphy. Yang Chen knew that this Chung and Hall was where Chunyang Palace accepted disciples as their master. It was very normal for him to come here as soon as he arrived. Seeing Chung and Hall from afar, Yang Chen's heart could not help but beat faster. Thinking that his master should be waiting for him in Chung and Hall, Yang Chen suddenly had a feeling of homesickness. Before arriving at Chung Hall, Yang Chen saw 2 acquaintances sitting on the side and seemed to be waiting for him. Among the 2 people sitting together, one was Zhu Chuntao, the head of the medicine hall, and the other was Su Qingxin, the head of the foreign affairs hall of Chunyang Palace. The 2 Jidan stage masters were smiling and looking at the direction where Yang Chen came in. Both of them were Jidan stage masters, and nominally, they were now Yang Chen's martial uncles, so naturally, they would not go to the gate to greet him. However, being able to wait for Yang Chen at the mountain gate was already giving Yang Chen a lot of face. Du Qian and the others hurriedly bowed down without thinking and called him martial uncle. Yang Chen did the same. As for the 4 servants behind Yang Chen, they all called him martial uncle. Although they were servants, they were also disciples of Chunyang Palace. Good boy, I haven't seen you for a few years, and you have done such a big thing. Zhu Chintao and Yang Chen were relatively familiar with each other. After they finished bowing, he stood up and directly picked up Yang Chen from the ground. He laughed, patted Yang Chen's shoulder repeatedly, and praised him loudly. Martial uncle, you flatter me. Yang Chen could only smile and say carefully, what's wrong? Even I have only heard of the heaven-seizing pill. I don't even dare to think about it, but you directly refined it. Haha. In the future, let's see who dares to say that there is no alchemist in Chunyang Palace. The smile on Zhu Qintao's face had never stopped. He patted Yang Chen's shoulder with one hand and almost did not stop. In the past few months, I don't know how many people have come to Chunyang Palace to ask for advice. Haha, you have made great contributions to Chunyang Palace. It seemed that the reputation of Chunyang Palace had risen greatly in the past few months. Otherwise, Elder Su Qingxin's face would not be so red and radiant. The result of many people coming to ask for advice was that the status of Su Qingxin, the head of the Foreign Affairs Hall, had risen. He was more proud than ever before, indicating that he was also very satisfied with Yangchun. Because of you, the number of Outer Mountain disciples who came to Chunyang Palace to be apprenticed has directly increased by more than 10 times this year. Even Yeshio Villa is almost unable to accommodate them. Su Qingshin's smile was not much less than Zhu Qintao's, and his eyes almost narrowed into a line. In this, you have made great contributions. I have reported to the palace master, and you will be rewarded according to your contributions. Martial nephew, you are just lucky. Zhu Qintao could say so, Su Qingshin could say so, but Yangchun could not take the credit without scruples, so he just said it modestly. Lucky? Zhu Qintao was startled, and then immediately laughed heartily. Of course you're lucky. Otherwise, why did Elder Wu not look for me but you? Why didn't you go to Immortal Falling Abyss later or earlier? You went when Elder Wu was about to refine the heaven-seizing pill, and you happened to be chosen by Elder Wu. This is your opportunity, and others can't snatch it even if they want to. Zhu Qintao's words were always straightforward, and Yangchun just listened with a smile, but did not say much. Zhu Qintao laughed for a while, turned his head to look at Cheng and Hall over there, and suddenly turned his head to ask Yangchun very seriously, Yangchun, become an apprentice of this old man. This old man will let you be a personal disciple. How about it? It had to be said that Yangchun's success in refining the heaven-seizing pill made Zhu Qintao want to accept him as a disciple. However, last time at 9 Earth Mountain Villa, he had mentioned it to Yangchun once, and Yangchun rejected it because it was against the rules. Zhu Qintao seemed to understand something, but he still wanted to fight for it again. There was no other way. An alchemy genius who could refine the heaven-seizing pill when he had just reached the foundation establishment stage was too enviable. Thank you, Uncle Master, for your kindness. Yangchun still did not change his mind. What a joke when Taishang Laojun said he wanted to accept Yangchun as his last disciple. Yangchun did not agree. How could he change his mind after Zhu Qintao's words? Uncle Master, even after I become an apprentice, I will still be a disciple of Chunyang Palace, and I will still come to you from time to ask for advice. It seemed that he did not answer Zhu Qintao's words, but everyone understood that this was Yangchun's tactful refusal. AI. Zhu Qintao shook his head and sighed. He looked at Cheng and Hall again, and gently patted Yangchun's shoulder. Go. Under everyone's gaze, Yangchun walked towards Cheng and Hall. This road was surprisingly dignified, and even Yangchun had a feeling that he was about to tremble with excitement. His master was waiting for him inside. When he thought of this, Yangchun had a kind of eagerness, but also uneasiness, for fear that the one who appeared was not his master. Step by step, he walked to the door of Cheng and Hall. Looking inside from the outside, it was dark, and Yangchun would not use his divine sense to explore. Standing at the door, Yangchun's breathing quickened, and he could hear the sound of his heart pounding in his ears. His footsteps had just stopped for a few breaths when he heard a familiar voice from inside. What are you still standing there for? Come in. Just hearing this voice that haunted his dreams, Yangchun's eyes couldn't help but turn red, but his heart was so happy that it almost exploded. Chapter 175. What are you still doing? Come in. In his previous life, when Yangchun was at the door of Chang'an Hall, because of his excitement, he also stopped at the door and heard this command. At the moment when he heard this, Yangchun didn't even know whether he was in his previous life or this life. Yes, holding back his excitement, Yangchun lifted his legs over the high threshold and entered Chang'an Hall. His eyes quickly adapted to the darkness in the hall, and he also saw the owner of the voice. A beautiful face, a tall figure, a familiar face and voice, with a look of appreciation and expectation in her eyes, looking at him with such a sweet smile. This scene, Yangchun had been looking forward to it for 10 years after his rebirth. Yangchun, you have the fire attribute of the 5 elements, which is just right for my fierce Yang Hall. Gao Yu's clear and familiar voice sounded in Yangchun's ear. It's just that I am very curious. Why don't you become a disciple of Hall Master Zhu? With your qualifications, it is not impossible to become a senior alchemist. Disciple entering Fierce Yang Hall does not hinder my disciple from becoming an alchemist. Yang Chun resisted the excitement. His strong will pressed his lips that were about to tremble, and he tried to say this in a plain tone. However, after saying it, he was still a little short of breath. Although your qualifications are ordinary, your understanding is very high. With the miracle of reaching the top of the heaven ladder, it is not impossible for you to become a disciple of the Hall Master. Why must you worship me as a master? Gao Yu's doubts were not solved by a sentence from Yang Chun, but she asked more. At this time, Gao Yu had not yet become the Hall Master of Fierce Yang Hall, and in terms of strength ranking, she could be regarded as the worst Jidon stage master in the Fierce Yang Hall. After all, Gao Yu had just condensed her Dan for less than 5 years. In these 5 years, it was only to let her consolidate her current realm. It was impossible to compete with those veteran Jidon stage masters. What puzzled Gao Yu was also here. One of the rewards given by the Palace Master of Chunyang Palace to Yang Chun for climbing the heavenly ladder was that he could choose anyone who was qualified to be Yang Chun's teacher. Yang Chun chose to worship her as his teacher according to this reward. This surprised not only Gao Yu, but also many other people in Chunyang Palace. Could it be that acknowledging a powerful master was not better than acknowledging a Jindan stage grandmaster who just had the qualifications to accept disciples? Disciples' intuition tells me that you are the most suitable person to be disciples' master. On this issue, it was impossible for Yang Chun to tell everything. He could only use such a lame reason to deal with Gao Yu's doubts. Before this, the disciples' intuition has never been wrong. The heavenly ladder is like this, and the refining of the heaven-seizing pill at the last moment is also like this. This reason may not be very convincing, but with Yang Chun's final explanation, it was hard not to believe. Yang Chun had proved how correct his intuition was with powerful facts. Even if others wanted to refute it, there was no stronger example to refute it. Gao Yu stared at Yang Chun carefully for a while. She could even feel the trembling of Yang Chun's forcible suppression. However, Gao Yu did not think it was strange. She had seen several disciples in the foundation stage before, and almost everyone would show the natural fear of the Jidon stage master. Especially under her gaze, it was inevitable that he would tremble. Maybe Gao Yu soon left the doubts behind. She just had the qualification to accept disciples. Gao Yu was very cautious about her first disciple, but now it seemed that she was also very satisfied. This disciple was also a genius and popular. In Chunyang Palace, and even in the entire world of cultivators, he was a well-known guy. I am Gao Yu of the Fierce Yang Hall. If you worship me, you will be a disciple of my Fierce Yang Hall. Gao Yu finally showed a smile on her face. It seemed that she was very happy to receive her first disciple. You are my first disciple, my first disciple. Hearing this, Yang Chun couldn't help it anymore. He quickly bowed down and kowtowed heavily. With a choked voice, he said loudly, "Disciple Yang Chun greets Master." At the moment when his forehead touched the ground, Yang Chun's tears couldn't stop bursting out. After thousands of years of longing, today he finally stood in front of his master again and heard the sweet voice of his master. Suddenly, Yang Chun felt that the suffering he suffered in the heavenly court in his previous life was nothing. If those could be exchanged for his master to stand in front of him, Yang Chun would rather endure another 10,000 years of pain. In his previous life, he was apprenticed 20 years later. At that time, Gao Yu already had the strength of the middle Jidon stage. Unlike now, she had just consolidated the realm of Jidon stage. It was not the turn of Yang Chun to become the first disciple, but in this life, Yang Chun became the first disciple of Gao Yu. Compared with the calm of Gao Yu before, Gao Yu, who had just reached the Jidon stage, seemed to have a sense of novelty in accepting disciples, like a girl who had not grown up, simple and lovely. Yang Chun's crying appearance on the ground did not hide from Gao Yu's spiritual awareness. On the contrary, Gao Yu was quite disapproving of Yang Chun's performance. Isn't it just apprenticing? Is it necessary? In any case, he was his first disciple. How could he cry like a woman? What kind of propriety would that be? Come and worship the ancestor master. Gao Yu reminded Yang Chun with dissatisfaction. Apprenticing to a master Naturally, he had to worship the ancestor master. This was the first time that Gao Yu had experienced it, and it seemed very fresh. Yes, master. Yang Chun hurriedly controlled his emotions and respectfully offered incense and kowtowed to the ancestor master of Chunyang Palace, and then once again visited Gao Yu. After serving tea, he finally became Gao Yu's disciple. For the first apprenticeship ceremony, Gao Yu was actually a little nervous. Even Zhu Chantao wanted to watch the ceremony, but was stopped by Gao Yu. In the Chang'an Hall, only the master and apprentice were there. In the future, step up your cultivation. Sitting on the upper hand, looking at the respectful Yang Chun, Gao Yu seemed to find a little master's feeling. She pretended to be old and began to admonish. We, master and apprentice, will make our branch the strongest in the fierce Yang Hall. Gao Yu must have seen many competitions within the sect, and there was such an unyielding spirit in her. She commanded Yang Chun, which was also her own goal. Yes, master, as long as you want it. Yang Chun promised loudly again. He didn't know how many times he had repeated it in his heart, but he didn't say it out loud. Master, I will not only make our branch the strongest in the fierce Yang Hall, but also let you ascend to the position of the fierce Yang Hall master. In the future, you will also sit on the throne of the palace master of Chunyang Palace. Chapter 176. As long as it's what I want. Gao Yu was a little surprised and stunned. In such a sentence, even if Gao Yu was stupid, she understood the meaning. As long as it's what you want, master. Yang Chun replied affirmatively again, nodding heavily, the expression on his face. There was no sign of joking. Well, if I want to keep my face forever. Without thinking about it, Gao Yu made a request. I know at least 3 kinds of methods to keep my face, and I also know 2 kinds of appearance pill recipes. With a slight smile, Yang Chun replied casually, no matter what method you use, I can make you young forever. What if I want the pill recipe of heaven-seizing pill? Gao Yu looked at Yang Chun as if she was looking at monster. She didn't know if what he said was true or false, but she immediately changed the topic and suddenly asked with a smile. The unique momentum of the Jidan stage master floated out faintly, waiting for Yang Chen's answer. The main ingredient of heaven-seizing pill is the best green jade Ganoderma. It is best to grow the green jade Ganoderma under the nourishment of the chalcedony in the deepest part of the best jade mine. Other auxiliary medicinal materials need, Yang Chun said without hesitation, without a trace of hesitation. Yang Chen's move also made Gao Yu sluggish for a moment. After a moment, she immediately reached out and covered Yang Chen's mouth. Stop, don't say it. Gao Yu couldn't imagine that she just asked tentatively. Yang Chun actually said the recipe of the heaven-seizing pill that the mortal cultivators dreamed of. Why do you do this? Gao Yu, who was a little moved, gently let go of the hand covering Yang Chen's mouth and asked with a frown. Because you are my master. Yang Chun didn't have any time to think about it and blurted out directly. The warmth and smoothness of Gao Yu's palm made Yang Chun almost couldn't help but kiss it secretly. But in the end, there was no extra action. It's just that between the mouth and nose, there was still a delicate fragrance like orchid and musk lingering. Gao Yu was close to him. How could she not hear the firmness and sincerity in Yang Chen's words? She was slightly moved, but also a little puzzled. However, since he had already acknowledged Zhang Xian as his master, there was still a long way to go in the future, so there was no rush. The simple apprenticeship ceremony didn't take too long, and there wasn't a single spectator present. When Yang Chun and Gao Yu walked out of Chang'an Hall, Zhu Chuntao and the others only waited for a little while. As for Yang Chen's choice, Zhu Chuntao and the others had protested before. How could such a talented disciple casually find an incompetent master? Wouldn't that ruin Yang Chen's future? But after arriving at the hierarch of Chunyang Palace, everything was decided. When Yang Chun climbed to the top of the celestial ladder, there was a reward. He was allowed to choose any qualified person in Chunyang Palace to be his master. The Lord of Chunyang Palace sat on the futon, did not lift his eyelids, and slowly said, "This is the reward he deserves." But his understanding is excellent, and his will is tenacious. Such a genius, if he is handed over to Gao Yu, who has never taught a disciple, Isn't it destroying him? Su Qingxin was very clear about how great Yang Chen's potential was. Not to mention anything else, just participating in the successful refining of the heaven-seizing pill and becoming the key to the success of it was enough to bring a senior alchemist to Chunyang Palace, and it could also bring a lot of benefits. If such a genius was really destroyed, it would be a real pity. Standing in front of the palace master, in addition to Su Qingxin and Zhu Chuntao, there was Liang Xiaoming, the master of Bright Moon Hall, and Xiao Ming, the current master of Fierce Sun Hall. In addition to those Yuanying stage elders who were in seclusion, even the top management of Chunyang Palace were naturally very concerned about the cultivation of a genius disciple. Gao Yu is also a Jian stage master, and she is qualified to accept disciples. With master's guidance, how can it destroy Yang Chun? The palace master still looked at ease, as if he was not talking about a genius disciple in his own sect, but an ordinary disciple. Palace master, what we mean is that it may be better if there's a master to guide him. Liang Xiaoming took over the conversation and said, seemingly to smooth things over, but no one knew what he was thinking. The palace master sat on his futon and did not even open his eyes. He just asked faintly, "In that case, let me ask you, before reaching the top of the heaven stairway, there is no need to say anything, just pretend that you don't know." After he reached the top of the heaven stairway, who taught him anything? Cultivation, alchemy, anything is there? At the same time, the palace master's divine sense seemed to stay on Liang Xiaoming for a while, and then quickly dissipated. This question made everyone speechless. There was a rift between the disciple, Chu Hong, and Yang Chun, and it seemed that everyone present knew. In this case, everyone knew what kind of life Yang Chun had in the past. Even in Yeshio Villa, Chu Hong did not let people enlighten Yang Chun. Later, everyone learned about this, but no one said much. At that time, a disciple in the Qi refining stage and a disciple in the foundation establishment stage, everyone still knew which one to choose. But now it was different. Yang Chun not only succeeded in the foundation establishment stage, but also successfully refined the heaven-seizing pill for Elder Wu Xiong. He had long become a hot spot among the alchemists. Liang Xiaoming was very embarrassed. Chu Hong was his disciple. Everyone knew, and Chu Hong dared to suppress Yang Chun so blatantly, precisely because he had Liang Xiaoming as his master. Others were not good to compete with him. But now Yang Chun's performance seemed to be a slap in Liang Xiaoming's face. The disciple did not live up to expectations, and, of course, the master was the one who lost face. Everyone was also speechless. They all knew about Yang Chen's experience. The reason why Yang Chen knew so much seemed to be attributed to Yang Chen's crazy reading in the scriptures pavilion of Nine Earth Villa. Moreover, the contribution points for him to enter the scriptures pavilion to read were exchanged with his own medicinal pills. No one else really helped him. On the contrary, Yang Chen had been fighting for face and reputation for Chunyang Palace in the past few years. Strictly speaking, everyone felt a little ashamed. Since he can cultivate to this point by himself, what are you worried about? Are you afraid that Gao Yu can't teach him well? The palace master finally opened his eyes. After looking around, he closed them again. If you are really worried, then let me open the scriptures pavilion of Chunyang Palace for him, and let him see whatever he wants to see. The last reward was the foundation establishment pill. Since he doesn't need it, then change it to this. In this regard, no one had any objections. Yang Chen's apprenticeship was a foregone conclusion, and now Yang Chun and Gao Yu became master and apprentice. Yang Chun, since you have become an inner mountain disciple, you must abide by the rules of Chunyang Palace. You must not violate them. Zhu Chuntao was very optimistic about Yang Chun, so he paid a lot of attention and care. Speaking of the sect rules, this disciple has something to report. Yang Chun remembered something at this time. He took off his Qinkuan bag from his waist, took out a compass from it, and then sent it to Du Qian with the Qinkuan bag. Chapter 177. Du Qian subconsciously took the Qinkuan bag and the compass. He didn't know what was going on. He looked at Yang Chun and asked doubtfully, This is my Qinkuan bag." Yang Chun pointed at the Qinkuan bag and then pointed at the compass. "This is the compass that can find the location of my Qinkuan bag." There are still a few more of these compasses. As he said that, he took out the other compasses from the chinquin bag. A series of identical compasses were placed neatly on the ground, which made people feel that something big was about to happen. I was chased by many people in the immortal falling abyss. Yang Chan narrated what happened, as if he was talking about something that had nothing to do with himself. Each of them has such a compass in their hands. Du Qian's face turned ashen as he listened to Yang Chen's understatement. Zhu Qintao was also unusually serious. Gao Yu had never experienced this kind of thing before. At this moment, she frowned and rushed directly to the front of Yang Chen. Looking at these things, she said angrily, "Who dares to touch my first disciple?" As usual, she blocked in front of him. Yang Chen looked at Gao Yu's narrow back and couldn't help but feel a sense of warmth. If Yang Chen hadn't had this kind of personality in his previous life, the tragedy that followed wouldn't have happened. Seeing Gao Yu's angry appearance, Yang Chen swore again. "In this life, I will hold up the sky for you. Master, let this disciple handle this kind of small matter." Yang Chen took a small step forward and stood next to Gao Yu. Although he was still half a body behind Gao Yu, he had already expressed his intentions clearly. Gao Yu glanced at Yang Chen and didn't say anything else. She just hummed in agreement with the dignity of a master. "Yang Chen, come with me to the law enforcement hall." Du Qian took Yang Chen's chinquin bag and put away all the compasses. He directly invited Yang Chen. The chinquin bag and the 7 compasses were neatly placed in a row on a long, wide table in the middle of the law enforcement hall lobby. Directly opposite was the hall master of the law enforcement hall, Yuanying ancestor Meng Xian. At this time, Meng Xian's face was also frosty, staring at these things in silence. There was a heart-palpitating silence on the scene. Du Qian stood on the side with his head down. It was hard to see his expression, but it was conceivable that he was not very happy. Yang Chen was a fellow disciple of his. Yang Chen was murdered in such a way. It would be strange if he could be happy. Similarly, the friends of Chen who came back with Du Qian would not be happy. Gao Yu, Zhu Qintao, and Su Qingxin didn't say anything. They directly slammed the table in the law enforcement hall and sat on the chair next to them, still angry. If the law enforcement hall didn't say something today, they would Ming Ling Tian. It was obvious that this was a purposeful conspiracy against Yang Chen. Meng Xian had already tested these compasses. They were only effective against Yang Chen's chinquin pouch. Other compasses were useless. It was clear that they were only targeting Yang Chen. There was an extremely well-hidden trace of refinement on the Cosmos sack. That place was a directional marker. These compasses had been refined after tracing that spot to find Yang Chen's whereabouts. And the refining method was obviously from the Chunyang Palace. For thousands of years, Chunyang Palace had not been so blatantly targeting the disciples of Chunyang Palace from the inside. Meng Xian could not help but be furious. Killing a fellow disciple, especially such a genius disciple, was simply cutting off the hope of the rise of Chunyang Palace. To be more serious, it was deceiving the master and destroying the ancestors. Such a huge matter was unprecedented. Naturally, he had to inform the palace master to make a decision. The flying sword sent by Meng Xian returned after a while. The palace master of Chunyang Palace followed the flying sword and stepped into the law enforcement hall. After entering the door, without saying a word, he went directly to the long table in the middle, reached out and picked up the chinquin pouch, and began to explore it with his divine awareness. The other party's refinement was very secretive. The place where something was slightly added was just on the belt of the chinquin pouch. If he didn't know that there was this compass, he wouldn't care about that place at all. Yang Chen also found this place after he guessed that the other party had this kind of arrangement. This is the work of a Jindan master. The palace master quickly made a judgment and frowned as if he couldn't believe it. It's the method of water, the method of our Chunyang Palace. As the palace master of Chunyang Palace said, so, the suspects have been delineated within the scope of several people. The palace master couldn't help but frown. A Jidan stage master, placed in any sect, was the revitalization force of the sect. If a Jidan stage master of the Puryang Palace was lost because of this matter, the palace master would have to weigh it. According to reason, this kind of thing should not happen. How could a Jindan master deliberately deal with an outer sect disciple in the qi refining stage? It should be known that Yang Chen's Chinquan pouch was issued shortly after he entered Yeshio Villa, and it was the standard equipment issued after Yang Chun defeated Sun Haijing and had the treatment of the third layer of qi refining stage. At that time, which Jindan master had such a great hatred with a boy from the countryside and had to use this means to plot against Yang Chun. This was really unreasonable. Who issued Yang Chen's Chinquan pouch? The palace master suddenly asked. It was Chu Hong, the training disciple at that time, who received it from the inner sect and then handed it to Wang Yuan, the director of Yeshio Villa, who issued it to Yang Chun. Every magic weapon issued by the sect was recorded. Meng Xian had just checked it, so when the palace master asked, he immediately answered. Wang Yuan was in the law enforcement hall and had just followed him. Meng Xian had already asked him. Chu Hong. The palace master frowned again. Everyone knew the conflict between Yang Chun and Chu Hong. If there was anyone who was the most suspicious, it was Chu Hong. However, Chu Hong was only in the foundation establishment stage, and it was impossible for him to achieve such a level of refining, which meant that there was someone behind him. Bright Moon Temple Master Liang Xiaoming naturally became the other most suspicious candidate. He was Chu Heng's master and also had the cultivation of the peak Jindan realm. He was fully capable of refining the Chinquan pouch. And the most consistent thing was that he was of the water attribute, which was completely in line with the palace master's judgment just now. Called Temple Master Liang over. After a while, the palace master secretly made a decision. He sat in the main seat of the law enforcement hall and gave an order to Meng Xian. Liang Xiaoming appeared in front of everyone in a while, but his face was full of confusion. He did not know why he had been called to the law enforcement hall. Temple Master Liang, you refined this Chinquan pouch later on, right? The palace master did not beat around the bush and went straight to the point. Chapter 178. Liang Xiaoming walked to the table with a puzzled face, took the Chinquan bag, and looked at it. Then he immediately nodded and admitted, yes, I refined this Chinquan bag later and added something that could be used for tracking. As soon as he said this, Gao Yu next to him was about to stand up and argue, but Yang Chun pulled her gently. Then he remembered that the palace master was present and restrained himself. Others stared at Liang Xiaoming with anger, but in the law enforcement hall, no one dared to lose their temper. Who did you refine this for? At this moment, the palace master of Chunyang Palace did not show any joy, anger, sorrow, or joy on his face. His tone was as usual, as if he was communicating in another place, without the seriousness in the law enforcement hall. It was my disciple, Chu Hong, who asked me to do it. He said that it was for a promising disciple. He was afraid that this disciple would have an accident when he went out. Especially with this, it made it easy for him to track. Liang Xiaoming was a little surprised. In fact, from the beginning, he felt that something was wrong. After answering this question, he asked doubtfully, is there something wrong with this Chinquan bag? Look at those compasses again. The palace master did not say much. He just raised his head and motioned him to look at the compasses next to the Chinquan bag. Liang Xiaoming turned around and picked up one of them. After exploring it with his divine awareness and spiritual qi, he immediately knew the use of the compass. After discovering its use, Liang Xiaoming frowned. Without hesitation, he checked it one by one. In the end, his face was full of anger. How could he be so stupid? Liang Xiaoming was not a fool. Of course, he knew what so many tracking compasses meant. He almost roared on the spot. Whose Chinquan bag is this? It's mine, Martial Uncle Liang. Yang Chun stood aside and replied immediately. Liang Xiaoming looked up and saw Yang Chun. He was not very surprised. He stared at Yang Chun for a while and said, why did Chu Hong want to kill you? How do I know? Yang Chun put on an innocent posture. Ever since this disciple entered the sect, Brother Chu has not seen me as pleasing to the eye. This was a fact. Even if Yang Chun did not say it, everyone knew it. Could there be some misunderstanding here? No matter what, Chu Hong was still Liang Xiaoming's disciple. At a time like this, Liang Xiaoming had to speak up for Chu Hong. Perhaps Chu Hong accidentally lost the tracking formation and someone else picked it up. You should know that you've attracted a lot of jealousy during the Celestial Stairway Assembly. Although Chu Hong doesn't like you, he doesn't want to kill you, right? This was the most obvious excuse, but as the leader of the Bright Moon Hall of Chunyang Palace, he still had the right to defend Chu Hong in front of the palace master, especially when he mentioned that he had accidentally lost the tracking formation. This explanation actually became reasonable. In any case, Chu Hong had left the sect to temper himself after the sect tournament, so it wasn't a big deal for him to lose some of his belongings. At most, he would gain a reputation for being careless, but he wouldn't be charged with any crime. This disciple was pursued by assassins twice outside the Nine Earth Mountain Villa, once before entering the Nine Earth Mountain Villa, and once before the Heavenly Stairway Assembly. Yang Chun didn't argue with Liang Xiaoming at all. He only told him about his experience of being pursued. Before the Heavenly Stairway Assembly, there weren't many people who were jealous of me. Everyone understood what Yang Chun was saying. Moreover, the two incidents that he mentioned were the ones that the Law Enforcement Hall had sent out in full force to search for assassins. The scene at the time was very big, and Du Qian still remembered it clearly. It seemed like Yang Chan was explaining that his being pursued had nothing to do with him reaching the top of the Heavenly Stairway Assembly. However, it led everyone's thoughts back to the two previous pursuits. This made Chu Hong even more suspicious. That was done by the outer sect disciple, Sun Haijing. At that time, he personally admitted it. Liang Xiaoming's expression was ugly. His own disciple was going to be accused of harming his fellow disciples. So how could he let it go? This disciple only wants to know. Sun Haijing is a disciple at the 4th layer of Qi training. He's not a pill refiner, nor is he a craftsman. He's definitely not a wealthy person. How did he pay 4 7th layer Qi training experts and 1 8th layer Qi training expert? Or did he have a good relationship with those assassins? In his previous life, Liang Xiaoming was the mastermind behind Gao Yu's betrayal. How could Yang Chun let him go? Even if it wasn't Liang Xiaoming who did it, he still had to oppose him. Moreover, Chu Hong should have died a long time ago. How could Yang Chun let Liang Xiaoming get away with it? Almost every word he said was like a pearl. None of them could be explained. If Liang Xiaoming accidentally said something wrong, it would mean that Chu Hong was guilty. Perhaps Sun Haijing used flowery words to deceive Chu Heng's trust. Liang Xiaoming said these words without blushing. After all, Sun Haijing is also his proud disciple. It's normal for him to be deceived by him. In any case, Chu Hong would at most bear the crime of negligence. He would not admit to being the mastermind. Perhaps senior brother Chu didn't lose it by accident. Yang Chun didn't want to entangle himself in this issue and change the subject. Why don't Master Liang summon Senior Chu back and ask him? If senior brother Chu doesn't dare to come back, it means he fled. Confronting him is also a solution. Liang Xiaoming nodded. I'll send a paper crane to Chu Hong, but might take half a year or a year. I don't know where he is now. Marshal Nephew Yang, did you get these compasses from the people who chased after you? Unfortunately, Marshal Nephew Yang's killing intent is too heavy. If you could leave a few alive, wouldn't we know? Yes. Yang Chen patted his head exaggeratedly and looked annoyed. If there were a few alive, the truth would come to light immediately. Catch the thief and get the stolen goods, Liang Xiaoming said indifferently. Since you want to say that Chu Hong did this, you must have evidence. I don't think these things alone are enough. As he said this, he looked at the Chinquan bag and the compasses and shook his head. He directly turned his head to the palace lord and put on a posture of protecting his disciple. How can you be so partial to your disciple? Gao Yu slammed the table, stood up, and loudly rebuked. You want to protect your disciple, and I also want to protect my disciple. If you want to punish Chu Hong, show me ironclad evidence. Liang Xiaoming didn't care about Gao Yu at this time. He coldly snorted and immediately retorted, You want to touch my disciple with just one side of the story? No way. The cold-faced Liang Xiaoming didn't wait for him to turn his head. He suddenly looked at Yang Chun with astonishment. He didn't know where he had picked up a limp body from. At first glance, it was obvious that he had been restrained. Yang Chun threw him to the ground. Fortunately, I didn't kill them all at that time. Yang Chun had a rejoicing expression. This person chased after me. Palace Lord and Hall Leader Ming, please decide. Chapter 179. 6 senses were sealed. To be exact, Yang Chun only sealed the guy's 5 senses: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. The other 5 senses were all sealed by Yang Chun, leaving only his consciousness. No one in the mortal world could learn such a brilliant technique. Only Yang Chun, who used to be an almighty immortal, knew this technique. Being conscious meant that he could think and did not fall into a coma. If he wanted to escape, it would be best if he was conscious, but under the premise that his 5 senses were sealed, it would not be luck, but a nightmare. He could not hear, see, smell, taste, or even touch. To be more serious, after his consciousness was sealed, he could not even feel cold, warm, painful, or itchy at all. It was as if he was forever exiled in a space where there was nothing, and even the passage of time was not clear. Under such circumstances, it was a torture to be conscious. The guy who was sealed almost went crazy. Every day in despair, he hoped that one day he could feel everything familiar again. Even if he was asked to die immediately, he was willing. I will tell you whatever you want to ask. I only ask for a quick death. When the guy was released by Yang Chun, he almost shed tears on the spot. He did not care where he was at all. He only wanted to die quickly. During the time when he was sealed, he did not even want to experience the helplessness and despair for a second. He would rather die quickly than be imprisoned like that again. The palace master and the law enforcement hall chief Meng Xian looked at each other and seemed to be a little surprised. When Liang Xiaoming saw this person, he was also shocked. When he heard what he said, his face changed greatly. If there was a witness and material evidence, Chu Hong could no longer be saved. When the witness told everything he knew like a bamboo tube pouring beans, everyone was already angry. The Taishamen dared to target Chunyang Palace like this. They did it when Yang Chun first entered the sect, when he climbed the heaven ladder, and now they even sent people to kill him. This was a slap in the face of Chunyang Palace. With only one witness, Liang Xiaoming still wanted to fight for his disciple. However, just as he started to argue, Yang Chun had already gotten another witness. Not long after he finished speaking, another one appeared. For in a row, Liang Xiaoming knew that Chu Hong was finished. Hall Master Su, go and negotiate with the Taishamen and ask them to give us an explanation. There was no joy or anger on the face of the palace master, but his voice contained a strong anger. The disciples of our Chunyang Palace are not to be bullied or slandered by others. I want the Taishamen to give me an explanation for the incident of climbing the stairway to heaven. Palace Master, during the heaven stairway, Taishamen lost 3 Jidan Grand Masters, if you mention it. Su Qingxin, as the Hall Master of the Foreign Affairs Hall, was tactful in handling matters and relatively more things to consider. Wouldn't the Palace Master provoke the Taishamen by asking him to negotiate like this? The loss of 100 Jidan Realm Masters was also their greatest heaven sect's fault. They still have to account for it. The Palace Master considered more things than Su Qingxin, but he also saw the problem from a higher perspective. You just go and negotiate and don't pay attention to other things. When the juniors of the Law Enforcement Hall heard the words of the Palace Master, they were naturally excited. The Palace Master was so willing to stand up for his disciples that he did not hesitate to fight against the top Taishamen in the world. At this moment, several disciples in the Law Enforcement Hall wished that they could die for Chunyang Palace. Even though they knew that Chunyang Palace and Taishamen could not have any big conflict in this matter, Yang Chun still felt very good. The reason why he rejoined Chunyang Palace was not unrelated to the protection of the disciples by Chunyang Palace in the beginning. As long as Liang Xiaoming of the Bright Moon Palace was not allowed to be the palace master, everything would be fine. Lord Liang, after talking about the external affairs, the palace master of Chunyang Palace turned to Liang Xiaoming, looked at the Lord of the Bright Moon Palace, and said, Chu Hong colluded with outsiders and killed his fellow disciples. There are witnesses and material evidence. What else do you have to say? I dare not. The identity of the Lord of the Bright Moon Palace did not bring Liang Xiaoming any privilege in front of the palace master of Chunyang Palace. Under the palace master's gaze, Liang Xiaoming lowered his head and did not dare to say anything. No objection? The palace master of Chunyang Palace asked again. No. Liang Xiaoming stared at the ground under the feet of the palace master and shook his head lightly, with a regretful expression on his face. Meng Xian, as a disciple of Chunyang Palace, Chu Hong colluded with outsiders and killed his fellow disciples. He is guilty of the most heinous crime. Fortunately, Yang Chun is safe. Chu Heng's cultivation will be abolished, and he will be expelled from the sect. Liang Xiaoming had no objection. The palace master turned to Meng Xian, the lord of the law enforcement hall, and said, "Recall Chu Hong and let the disciples of the law enforcement hall execute him." "Yes, palace master." Meng Xian bowed and answered. Chu Heng's crime had been determined. Even Liang Xiaoming could not protect him. Yang Chun. After announcing Chu Heng's crime, the palace master handed over Yang Chun. Yang Chun hurriedly answered and stood next to Liang Xiaoming in the middle. Abolish his cultivation and expel him from the sect. This is the punishment of the Chunyang Palace. As for the personal grudge between you and him, you deal with it yourself. The palace master said calmly, but everyone could hear the killing intent in his words. One could imagine the result of a guy whose cultivation had been abolished facing Yang Chun, who wanted to solve his personal grudge. Thank you, palace master, for upholding justice. Yang Chun thanked him. The palace master was like a roundworm in his stomach. He even knew that Yang Chun wanted to kill Chu Hong with his own hands and gave such an order. Apart from thanking him, what else could Yang Chun say? Temple Master Liang. The matter was not over yet. The palace master of Chunyang Palace once again turned to Liang Xiaoming. You have a bad judgment of people and failed to teach them well. You are also responsible. You are punished to face the wall for 10 years and reflect on your mistakes. In addition, you will be responsible for rewarding Yang Chun with the materials of the flying sword. Yes, palace master. Liang Xiaoming did not resist at all. On the surface, Liang Xiaoming actually acted as an accomplice this time. He refined the Qinkuan bag that originally belonged to Yang Chun. Although he could say that he was deceived by Chu Hong, who knew the inside story, it was just that the palace master did not intend to pursue this matter. If Liang Xiaoming still insisted on it, he would jump out himself. Yang Chun, you climbed to the top of the celestial ladder. I should have given you a reward earlier, but you had not reached the foundation building realm at that time, so the reward was delayed. The palace master of Chunyang Palace once again encouraged Yang Chun. Now that you have become an inner disciple, the promised foundation building elixir is useless. In this case, you will be converted into 10,000 contribution points. In addition, your master will refine a flying sword suitable for you. I hope you will practice diligently and make further progress. As for the place to practice, you can choose any cave residence within the range of Meiqing Mountain. Chapter 180. Thank you, Palace Master. Yang Chun bowed again to express his gratitude. At this moment, since he was already an inner sect disciple, all the rewards promised by the Palace Master of Chunyang Palace had to be fulfilled in a short period of time. However, such a reward or punishment for Yang Chun, there was not much that moved him. He did not lack all the resources. Just now, in the series of punishments given by the Palace Master of Chunyang Palace, only the Taishaman had to give an explanation, which showed his support for Yang Chun. However, then again, the Taishaman had to give an explanation for the Heaven Stairway incident. This incident had already happened for 7 or 8 years. Why didn't they give an explanation before? Yang Chun understood very well that even if he was a genius disciple, he was only a genius disciple in the Qi refining stage. After the Heaven Stairway gathering was completed, it was not worth it to completely fall out with the Taishaman because of him, and it was not worth it to ask the Taishaman for an explanation because of him alone. They had already lost several Jiedan stage masters. What else did they need to explain? But now was obviously very different from the past. Since the news that Yang Chun had successfully refined the heaven-seizing pill spread, Yang Chun was no longer a simple genius disciple in the foundation establishment stage, but a helper that could let many Yuanying stage masters and even Deshang stage masters see the hope of ascending. Ordinary geniuses could only improve their own ability and improve the reputation of the sect a little. However, such a superb alchemist master was more than that. The benefits that a senior alchemist master could bring to the sect were simply innumerable. It could even be said that in the end, it would be no problem for the Chunyang Palace to get the support of a large number of powerful people. Comparing before and after, of course, the treatment was not the same. In the past, the attitude of Chunyang Palace was only strong support. At this time, it was natural to reflect the desperate support for Yangchun. The grievances that Yangchun had suffered in the past must be taken back. The conspiracy that Yangchun had suffered in the past must be given a reasonable explanation. The damage that Yangchun had suffered in the past would be returned to the masterminds at this time. Anyway, from now on, Yangchun was the spokesperson of Chunyang Palace. Any conspiracy against Yangchun must be resolutely smashed and fought back to ensure that Yangchun would not have any problems. How could Yangchun not think of the current palace master of Chunyang Palace? Yangchun's friends might only see the Chunyang Palace's support for Yangchun, but they did not know these considerations. Yangchun had a good impression of the Chunyang Palace, and it was all because of his master in the Fierce Sun Hall. Now, the Medicine Hall, the External Affairs Hall, and the Law Enforcement Hall might also be added. However, Yangchun had never had a good impression of the current palace master of Chunyang Palace and the Bright Moon Hall. Speaking of it, although the current palace master of Chunyang Palace was not bad, he was still somewhat partial to the Bright Moon Hall. Otherwise, the Bright Moon Hall master Liang Xiaoming would not have betrayed Gao Yu after he became the palace master of Chunyang Palace. Based on this alone, Yangchun would not be grateful to the palace master of Chunyang Palace. So far, the palace master of Chunyang Palace was still very partial to the Bright Moon Hall master Liang Xiaoming. Including in this matter, Liang Xiaoming only said that he had a bad judgment of people and gently avoided all the blame. He did not even continue to investigate whether or not Liang Xiaoming had been involved in the plot to kill Yangchun. He only lightly let it go based on Liang Xiaoming's self-defense that he had been tricked by Chu Hong. Although this method added a little punishment later on, it still preserved the identity of Bright Moon Palace Master. The punishment of seclusion was not painful at all. After all, Yangchun was not a direct descendant of the Palace Master of Chunyang Palace. It was not worth it to give up the Bright Moon Hall Master for Yangchun's emotional consideration. If Yangchun wanted to change the balance, there was probably only one way left, which was to improve his strength until no one dared to ignore him. However, Yangchun did not need to think about these things for the time being. Even if he did, it would not help. Therefore, Yangchun accepted the reward from the palace master of Chunyang Palace happily and stood behind his master obediently. After dealing with this, the Law Enforcement Hall naturally began to search for Chu Heng's whereabouts frantically. Du Qian could only apologize to Yangchun, as he could not choose a dwelling with him. Others made an appointment with Yangchun to choose the location of the Immortal's Cave and first return to their own Immortal's Cave to cultivate. As for Yangchun, he followed Gao Yu and returned to Gao Yu's dwelling first. My dwelling is simple and crude. Feel free to sit. Gao Yu's dwelling was indeed simple and crude. After returning to her own territory, Gao Yu was very relaxed. She did not continue to keep a straight face and allowed Yangchun to do as he pleased. This was how casual his master usually was in Yangchun's memories. Although it did not seem like there were rules between master and disciple, it was more like a home. Yangchun liked it very much. What is your current cultivation base? What are you good at? What kind of flying sword do you want me to refine for you? Without saying anything, Gao Yu first asked Yangchun about his requirements for a flying sword. This was the reward given to Yangchun by the palace master. Now that even the materials were provided, Gao Yu immediately began to work, for fear that her disciple would fail. Master is not busy. Take a break and wait for the disciple to serve you tea. How could Yangchun let Gao Yu be so tired? He took out a set of tea sets and tea leaves that had been prepared for a long time from the merit ring. He took out the spring water that he had searched for before the heavenly stairway gathering. The profound spirit furnace appeared directly and began to boil water for Gao Yu. Gao Yu liked to drink tea. This was her hobby. Yang Chun certainly knew it. Everything. Yang Chun had already searched for it and was just waiting for the moment to meet again. Seeing that Yang Chun was so busy, Gao Yu was very surprised, but she also liked it very much, especially after smelling the smell of the tea leaves in Yang Chun's hands. It was even more so. The tea carefully prepared by Yang Chun happened to be the taste that Gao Yu liked, and Yang Chun's way of brewing tea was novel, and the technique of brewing tea was skillful, which made Gao Yu full of expectations. The spring water that was heated by the profound spirit furnace was the most suitable for brewing tea, and it was poured into the teapot. After a series of procedures, Yang Chun held the teacup in front of Gao Yu. "Master, please drink tea." When Gao Yu took it and slowly smelled the fragrance, Yang Chun continued, "This tea is not old enough. After a few decades, Master will have the best tea to enjoy." "Okay, I'll wait." Gao Yu didn't seem to be polite with Yang Chun. She nodded directly and drank the tea in her hand. She praised loudly, "Good tea. Master, your Immortal's cave is really simple and crude, and the spiritual power of the veins is insufficient." Yang Chun knew Gao Yu's habit of drinking tea. Watching Gao Yu drink the tea that he had cooked himself, he was happy in his heart and said casually, "When a disciple chooses the location of the Immortal's cave tomorrow, I will also choose a new Immortal's cave for Master." Chapter 181. This Immortal's cave mansion is simple and crude, and the spiritual power of the earth vein is insufficient. Listening to Yang Chen's impolite evaluation, Gao Yu couldn't help but widen her eyes. She looked at Yang Chun as if she was looking at a guy she had never seen before. Of course, in fact, today was only the first time Gao Yu and Yang Chun met, so it was normal that they didn't know each other. "Master, rest assured, this disciple knows that there is a most suitable Immortal's cave mansion on Meiqing Mountain. It's not a problem to build a few Immortal's caves. Leave everything to this disciple." Yang Chun was happy at the moment, patting his chest, not caring about Gao Yu's strange look at Yang Chun. "You seem to know a lot of things, don't you?" Gao Yu was very smart, otherwise she wouldn't have been Yang Chun's master in her previous life. Looking at Yang Chun, Gao Yu asked directly, even as the palace master said, "You don't even need my guidance on cultivation, right?" This disciple once memorized the scripture pavilion of the Nine Earth Mountain Villa, so naturally I know some things that others don't know. Yang Chun replied with a smile. However, this disciple will certainly ask Master for advice on cultivation problems. It was something that couldn't be helped in the past, but now it's not. Yang Chun's words also made Gao Yu more and more curious about Yang Chun. She couldn't help but pick up another cup of tea that Yang Chun handed over, tilted her head, and looked at Yang Chun and asked, "What do you think if I also read the scripture pavilion?" The series of movements just now was so natural, and the two of them cooperated as if they had practiced it many times. If Master wants to be an alchemist or a refiner, then it's useful to read more books that can increase your knowledge. Yang Chun shook his head and replied with a smile, "But if Master only wants to improve your cultivation, there is no benefit in reading these things. It's just a waste of time and energy. It's not worth it." And it makes sense. Gao Yu sat on the chair and nodded unconsciously. Her character was indomitable, and she really didn't like the tedious work of alchemy. If it weren't for her cultivation being inseparable from magic weapons, she might not even touch refining, let alone be interested in it. Yang Chen's words directly dispelled her thoughts of going to the scripture pavilion to read books. However, if this question and answer was heard by people who didn't know the inside story, they might think that Gao Yu was a disciple and Yang Chun was a master. The two said it so naturally and didn't feel anything wrong at all. In his previous life, Yang Chun often discussed problems with his master like this. Gao Yu also liked this atmosphere, but it was rare to have such a tacit understanding when the master and apprentice first met. Next, Gao Yu had to taste the tea served by Yang Chun in time, while testing Yang Chun's cultivation base. She might not be able to give pointers on alchemy, but in terms of cultivation, she was a Jidan stage master after all. She would have more experience than Yang Chun. In alchemy, she might not be able to give pointers, But in cultivation, she was after all a Jiadan stage master. How could she be more knowledgeable than Yang Chun? The master didn't put on the airs of a master, but the disciple knew almost all of the master's preferences and served him very well. On the first day of apprenticeship, Yang Chun and his master got along very well. This was the feeling that Yang Chun dreamed of, and the disciple knew almost all of the master's preferences and served him very well. This was also the feeling that Yang Chun dreamed of. He had been thinking about it for thousands of years, and he had been looking forward to it for 10 years after his rebirth. Now it really happened in front of Yang Chen's eyes. Even with the mentality of Yang Chen's great principle, Golden Immortal, he couldn't help but be fascinated. Perhaps the strong expectation in his heart was satisfied, and his thoughts were clear. When he rested and practiced at night, Yang Chun could even feel that the spiritual power seemed to flow more smoothly in the meridians. Especially the yin in Yang five-element secret art, there was a feeling of boiling. Early the next morning, Gong Sunling, Shanghai Feng, and Wang Yuan rushed to the entrance of Gao Yu's Immortal's cave. Yesterday, Yang Chun made an appointment with them to find a location for his Immortal's cave. Gao Yu also went, and everyone was not surprised. Finding a suitable Immortal's cave for one's apprentice was what the master should do. However, Yang Chun was a bit special, so he did it himself. But despite this, Yang Chun had already said that he wanted her to give up her current Immortal's cave, so Gao Yu had to go and see it. Gong Sunling was also very special. Although she had built her foundation a few years ago, she had not opened her own Immortal's cave. Before Yang Chun went to the Immortal Falling Abyss, he told Gong Sunling not to rush to choose an Immortal's cave and to wait until he came back. At this point, Gong Sunling did not know why, but she listened to Yang Chen's advice and waited until now. It was set to find a location for Yang Chen's Immortal's cave, but in fact, it was to find 3 Immortal's caves for Gong Sunling, Gao Yu, and Yang Chun. The scope of Meiqing Mountain was very large, more than 1,000 miles. The location of Chunyang Palace was on the highest peak of Meiqing Mountain. This was the place with the densest spiritual energy in the earth veins, and it was also the place where the Immortal's caves of Chunyang Palace were most concentrated. Of course, Yang Chen would not choose to be crowded with so many people. Even if the spiritual power was strong, it would be almost the same if so many people divided it. Therefore, Yang Chun directly took everyone to fly slowly along a small ridge of Meiqing Mountain, pretending to feel the spiritual power, but in fact he had already determined the goal. Here, Gao Yu looked at the place where Yang Chun landed and couldn't help but frown. The others also looked puzzled, but no one questioned it. They just followed Yang Chun to the ground, and then carefully felt the surrounding spiritual power. The place where they landed was a valley that was not too big, but not too small. The scenery here was very good. There were mountains on all sides. They were not high, but they were just enough to block the wind from all directions. It was only a distance of half an hour from the main hall of Chunyang Palace, which was not too far or too close. Junior brother Yang, the spiritual power here seems to be ordinary, right? It was not easy for others to ask, so Gong Sunling was the most suitable person to ask. Shangguan Feng and Wang Yuan were here to help, and Gao Yu was Yang Chen's master, so it was not easy to question them. Only Gong Sunling, who was looking for Immortal's cave, was the most suitable person to ask. On the surface, it seemed so. Yang Chen smiled and did not hide it from everyone. However, I once found a very interesting jade slip on an assassin. The jade slip recorded an underground spiritual vein that he accidentally discovered. In the area of Meiqing Mountain, there were also many individual cultivators, and Chunyang Palace allowed them to exist. If these people wandered around occasionally, they might find something that the people of Chunyang Palace did not know. Moreover, the assassin was dead. No one could prove whether he had found it or not. Everything could be blamed on the dead man. Where is it? When Yang Chun said this, everyone became interested. A hidden underground spirit vein was definitely something that cultivators yearned for even in their dreams. Chapter 182. Yang Chun stretched out his finger and pointed at his feet, smiling without saying a word. This place was a super strong earth vein that was discovered after 200 years. although it was not as good as the earth vein in the main hall of Chunyang Palace. Only a few of them used it, and the effect was better than that in the main hall. Everyone immediately followed his movements and looked at Yang Chen's feet. However, no matter how they looked, no matter how they sensed the spiritual power or explored with their divine senses, they could not see anything strange here. An ordinary small valley had nothing to do with the underground spirit vein at all. Don't be in a hurry. Should we encircle this place first? Yang Chen knew everyone's doubts, but he did not immediately start to get the underground spiritual veins out. Instead, he put forward such a suggestion. Otherwise, when we get the underground spiritual veins, maybe we will be given a share by others. You all know that I don't like the people of Bright Moon Palace. Yang Chen's suggestion was just to everyone's liking. Even within the sect, the competition for resources was very fierce. Bright Moon Palace was now relatively strong, so naturally, they had more resources. At least half of the small courtyards closest to the center of Chunyang Palace with the most spiritual power belonged to Bright Moon Palace. For some reason, Gao Yu did not seem to have any doubts about Yang Chen. It seemed that if Yang Chen said there was an underground spirit vein here, then there must be. Without saying a word, she directly flew up on her sword. In an instant, she turned into a stream of light in the air and went straight to the main hall of Chunyang Palace, leaving a lingering voice in the air. I will report to the palace master and move my cave residence here. Gao Yu's cave residence was also very close to the center of Chunyang Palace. It was unknown how many people coveted it. At this time, if Gao Yu wanted to move it out, there would definitely be people who would be happy. It was believed that the palace master would also be very happy. People like Yang Chun who were willing to consider the sect were simply unique. Senior sister, what kind of cave residence are you going to build? Yang Chun wasn't in a hurry to start. He got a few stone chairs for everyone and sat down to chat. As he spoke, Yang Chun stretched out both his hands, and a clump of flames began to change shape within his hands. All sorts of houses appeared in Yang Chen's hands like a revolving lantern. This time, when choosing the Immortal's cave, Yang Chen definitely had a plan. Gong Sunling was a once-in-a-millennium genius, and his master Gao Yu was also a postnatal water spirit root full value. Plus Yang Chen himself, the three people were enough to set off a storm that would stun the entire cultivation world in the future. If the three of them were to gather together early, they would be able to complement each other's strengths, and their future development would be very smooth. Fortunately, Gong Sunling listened to Yang Chen's suggestion and did not build a cave residence, waiting for Yang Chen to come back. This also meant that the seeds he had planted earlier were beginning to bear fruit. Gong Sunling was able to side with Yang Chen, which had already established the absolute right to speak in Chunyang Palace in the future. Although the underground spirit vein under their feet was rich in spiritual power and was enough for the masters of the Yuanying stage to use, it was only the Immortal's cave that Yang Chen prepared for Gao Yu and Gong Sunling before the Yuanying stage. As for the cultivation after the Yuanying stage, Yang Chen had a better choice, but at this time, he was not able to collect it. Gong Sunling was attracted by the house in Yang Chen's hands and began to slowly observe and appreciate it. Even Shanghai Feng and Wang Yuan joined in. Thinking of Wang Yuan's words about following his lead, Yang Chen suddenly became excited. It seemed that he should also unite a large force in Chunyang Palace. At that time, coupled with the strength of his future fellow apprentices, it would be enough to control the entire Chunyang Palace. If senior brother Shangwan and senior brother Wang are interested, it is better to move over. Yang Chen said to the two with a smile. The more people, the more lively it is, and everyone can be closer. Yang Chen's suggestion made the two very excited. Even Gao Yu, who was in the Jidan stage, did not hesitate to give up the cave residence in the main hall of Chunyang Palace, so it would not be bad here. However, they had their own masters, so it was not easy for them to make their own decisions. Shanghai Feng thought for a while and replied with uncertainty. When we go back and ask Master, if it's okay, we will move over. Well, when the time comes, we will also pull senior brother Du Qian. We don't have to build a separate cave residence. We can directly build a large manor and choose our own rooms to live in. Yang Chun directly stopped the changes of the pavilions and turned to ask Gong Sumling, "What does senior sister think?" "All right." Gong Sumling just pondered a little and nodded in agreement. "Then I will trouble senior sister to set up a few arrays around to encircle the site." Yang Chun was also not polite and directly began to ask Gong Sumling to work. "After we build the cave residence, I will take senior sister to a super strong illusion array to have a look. Maybe the world can move that illusion array around our cave residence." Yang Chun was talking about the illusion array arranged by the predecessor when he was collecting the sword case. For the current Gong Sumling, it was definitely a weapon for self-defense after mastering it. Anyway, he didn't need it, and the fertile water should not flow to outsiders. It was just right for Gong Sumling. Gallia left quickly and came back quickly. After a while, she came down with a sword light and rushed to Yang Chun. "I have already talked to the head of the palace, and the palace master agreed. Now you show me how strong this underground spiritual vein is." After that, the sword light scattered, and there were a few more people in the open space. 4 of them were Shunda, He Lian, Yuan Ting, and Gu Kun. The rest were also the servants of Gao Yu and Gong Sumling. They were brought together, and when the time came, they would also be asked to contribute. With the consent of the head of the palace, everything was easy. However, Yang Chun still made a lot of preparations in advance. Gong Sumling's array was also arranged. In addition to protection, a spirit gathering array and a spirit sealing array were specially arranged. The spiritual energy was gathered underground, and the spiritual energy was blocked above to prevent the spiritual energy from overflowing. After all the preparations were made, Yang Chun began to make his move. Taking out the 64 middle-grade spirit stones of the same size that had already been prepared, Yang Chun placed them on the ground in a very regular pattern, plus other various array materials, and soon a formation that no one had seen before was arranged. Everyone looked at it for a while, and even Gong Sumling, who specialized in arrays, did not see what kind of array it was. For Yang Chun, this junior brother, she felt more and more mysterious. After arranging the array, Yang Chun stepped back a few steps and began to control the operation of the array. In a moment, the ground within the scope of Yang Chun's array flashed with a dazzling white light. The white light was very bright, but it was condensed and did not disperse, as if a phantom of a giant beast began to dig into the ground. But if you look closely, you can find that it seems that nothing has been dug up. However, soon everyone felt a majestic spiritual power getting closer and closer, rushing up from the ground. After a while, the spiritual power sprayed out from the ground like a fountain, and the spirit gathering array instantly became very bright. Everyone was directly enveloped by this crazily spurting spiritual power. Chapter 183. In the beginning, when Yang Chun took out 64 middle-grade spirit stones, Shanghai Foam and Wang Yuan still felt a little pain. It must be known that the 64 middle-grade spirit stones were the same size, and each of them was a full 10 gene. If converted, it would be 64,000 kilograms of low-grade spirit stones. So many spirit stones. Even if Shanghai Foam and Wang Yuan joined with Gong Sumling, it was estimated that they could not come up with so many spirit stones, but Yang Chun did not even blink and took them out. Needless to say, just the spiritual power absorbed from so many spirit stones was comparable to a lower-grade spiritual vein. Yang Chun actually used so many things to arrange a formation that they could not understand. It was simply extravagant. Fortunately, everyone knew that Yang Chun was rich. Needless to say, just the successful refining of the heaven-seizing pill, presumably Elder Wu Xiong would not treat Yang Chun badly, and the spirit stones were just a trivial thing. Everyone just felt pity for the consumption of so many spirit stones. However, when this surging and majestic spiritual power surged out, everyone no longer had any thoughts of pity. Compared with this underground spiritual vein, not to mention 640 gene of middle-grade spirit stones, even 6,400 gene or 64,000 gene was definitely worth it. Such a spiritual vein was enough to be compared with 80% of the entire Chunyang Palace's main vein, and only few of them could use it. Now, Shanghai Feng and Wang Yuan did not need to ask their master. They could be sure that if their master knew about the situation of the spiritual vein here, he would definitely urge them to move over. The master did not have this opportunity in face to move over, but the disciple had this opportunity, what was there to refuse and quickly move over. Including those servants, everyone was surrounded by a thick and almost impenetrable spiritual power. There was only one consistent feeling, and that was, it was extravagant. This was too extravagant. Such a rich spiritual power was enough for hundreds of people in the pure Yang Palace to use, but it was only used by these few people. In addition to extravagance, they couldn't think of any other words to describe it. At first, Gao Yu thought that it was just a spiritual vein similar to her original cave house. At first, she didn't hold much hope, but when this spiritual power gushed out wildly, even the Jidan stage master couldn't help but be stunned, almost couldn't believe everything she perceived. Is this true? Gao Yu was not the only one who had this idea. The others also felt like they were in a dream. Compared to the past, if their original cave residents could only have a small stream of water to quench their thirst, this place could directly take a bath and swim, and it was a huge swimming pool. Isn't this a little too exaggerated? Gao Yu stuttered out these words. The kind of ecstasy on her face, plus the unbelievable expression, made Yang Chen look at it and almost became crazy. In this life, what Yang Chen wanted to see most was Gao Yu's beautiful smiling face. Now was the first time. In the future, Yang Chen would do countless things to make Gao Yu happy. Gao Yu's smiling face made Yang Chen feel that all the previous efforts were completely worth it. While everyone was in shock, after secretly appreciating his master's happiness for a while, Yang Chen coughed softly, waking everyone up from that kind of intoxication. Should we start to build our Immortal's cave first? Yang Chen reminded everyone, and everyone remembered that they should get down to business. Fortunately, everyone was equally intoxicated, including the Jidan stage master Gao Yu, but no one laughed at anyone's problem. Yang Chen had just proposed a large manor. Gao Yu clapped her hands in favor. She liked the feeling of home. Yang Chen's suggestion almost spoke to her heart. They were all cultivators, everyone showed their magical powers, and the small valley became completely different within 10 days. The continuous villas that covered the entire valley were quickly built. Pavilions, small bridges, flowing water, everything was built like a luxurious villa. Shangguan Feng Wang Yuan returned to Chunyang Palace once and brought all his servants over. As expected, their master immediately chased them over. When the villa was built, even the head of the palace and Zhu Chuntao, the master of the medicinal hall, rushed over to celebrate. There was no intention to hide it from the palace master. However, when they walked in through the peripheral formation, there was still no image of the Yuanying stage ancestors and the Jidan stage masters, and they opened their mouths in amazement on the spot. This is the spiritual vein that you found. The palace master recovered very quickly, even if he almost drooled with envy, but he quickly recovered his composure. Yes, palace master. Gao Yu, as the most senior person among the people, answered the question of the palace master, and then asked with a smile, "Why? Does the palace master regret it? Or the palace master will also move over? This is your fate. You can't force it." The palace master was very envious, but he still shook his head and refused Gao Yu's polite invitation. After calming down, the palace master was also very happy. In any case, this was used by the disciples of Chunyang Palace, and the two genius disciples who were hard to meet in 100 years were in it. The meat was rotten in the pot, and the benefits were still from Chunyang Palace. The palace master looked for a while and nodded with satisfaction. He didn't care whether the building was exquisite or not, but the abundant spiritual power and the complementary spirit gathering array and spirit locking array were just right. Almost everyone could cultivate on top of a spirit gathering array. In Chunyang Palace, this was the treatment of the most core disciples, but here, even servants could do it. Does this villa have a name? After appreciating it, the palace master couldn't help but ask. I was about to ask the palace master to give it a name. Gao Yu also knew how to make the palace master happy, and directly handed over this power to the hands of the palace master. Well, since you are from the Liang Hall, this place is called the Liang Courtyard. The palace master was not pretentious. After a little thought, he gave a name. After giving the name, the palace master asked Yangchun and Gong Sunling, Yangchun, Gong Sunling, this is also your cave residence. Today is a happy time for you to move in. What do you want to say? Disciple thanks the palace master for giving me a name. Gong Sunling just bowed to thank him and did not say anything else. The palace master nodded slightly and raised his hand to indicate that Gong Sunling did not need to be too polite, but his eyes were fixed on Yangchun. Everyone knew that Yangchun was the one who found this spiritual vein, and the palace master also wanted to know what Yangchun would say. Disciple has a small matter to ask the palace master for help. Facing the palace master of Chunyang Palace, Yangchun did not care about the huge difference in their identity and cultivation. He directly made a request, as if he was facing an ordinary elder. What's the matter? The palace master asked curiously. Disciple got some 5-element spirit marrow in the immortal falling abyss, and I want to ask the palace master to help me expand the spiritual vein. As Yangchun said this, a chinquin bag appeared in his hand, but it was unknown which guy he killed. He opened the pouch and poured out the spirit marrow inside. Chapter 184. Looking at the huge pile of spiritual essence, everyone felt as if they had been suddenly restricted. They stood rooted to the ground, unable to move. Dozens of eyes were completely attracted by the pile of spiritual essence on the ground and could no longer be pulled away. Everyone was stunned. Even the head of the palace was no exception. Even if they had not been to the immortal falling abyss, they knew the existence of the 5 elements spiritual essence and understood its role. That was a good thing that could improve the quality of the earth's veins and increase the total amount of spiritual power. Even the head of the palace, at this moment, looked at the large pile of 5 elements spiritual essence and could not say anything. The palace lord had seen the spiritual marrow before and had even used it himself. However, he had never seen so much spiritual marrow gathered together. Which disciple who went to the immortal falling abyss brought back more than 10,000 spiritual essence? It was always the joint efforts of a few disciples, after 10 years in the immortal falling abyss, to be able to save 50,000 spiritual essence. After returning to the sect, they would transform a certain underground spiritual vein and share it with everyone. Yangchun, a disciple of the Qi refining stage, actually directly took out such a large pile of spiritual essence. Looking at the huge pile on the ground, it was definitely more than 50,000. It may even be 100,000. What made everyone even more indignant was that so many of the 5 elements spiritual essence that everyone treasured, Yangchun actually piled it directly on the ground. And looking at the appearance of the chinquin bag in Yangchun's hand, they did not know which rogue cultivator used it. It was bad to the extreme. Even in the heart of the head of the palace, there was suddenly an unsuppressible envy. Such a rich spiritual power, coupled with so many 5 elements spiritual essence. This fierce sun courtyard with only more than 20 servants was simply better than the treatment of the head of the sect. For a time, the head of the palace wished he could shout at Yangchun. There was already such a rich spiritual power here. What was the point of wasting these spiritual essences? How many of these spiritual essences are here? Gao Yu was also dumbfounded, but relatively speaking, Yangchun had brought her enough surprises these days, so she almost had a kind of immunity. But even so, Gao Yu was still stunned for a moment before asking this question. Not much, exactly 100,000. Yangchun answered casually, which made people want to grab him and beat him up. 100,000 5 elements spiritual marrow was not a lot. How can anyone endure this? Because of Yangchun's answer, everyone's gaze shifted from the spirit marrow to Yangchun. Yangchun shrugged his shoulders helplessly and replied innocently, Elder Wu gave it to me. You guys know that he has a lot of these things. This answer also made everyone understand. Wu Xiong was an elder overseeing the immortal fallen abyss, and he had been overseeing it for hundreds of years. It was no surprise that he had so much spiritual marrow on him. Moreover, compared to the value of the heaven-seizing pill, this bit of spirit marrow was really nothing. Everyone couldn't help but envy Yang Chen's good luck. Of course, they were even more curious about Yang Chen's alchemy ability. To be valued by Elder Wu, it was by no means an ordinary technique. The head of the palace and Zhu Chantao even made a decision that in the future they would definitely come to the Fierce Sun courtyard. Maybe there would be some great benefits coming to the door. Little did they know that Yang Chun had such an idea in his heart. As the head of the palace, of course, it was not good to blatantly rob the Immortal's cave opened by the disciples, but it was okay to come and see it often. Anyway, the spiritual energy of the feng shui line was not bad for 1 or 2 Yuaning stage masters. On the contrary, if the head of the palace often appeared, the status of the Fierce Sun courtyard would be improved imperceptibly. The other disciples who did not have eyes and wanted to make trouble would also have to think about it. Although the head of the palace had expelled Chu Hong from the sect and let the Bright Moon Temple master, Liang Xiaoming, face the wall and reflect on himself, the friends and disciples of these two people would definitely cry out for them. They would definitely look for opportunities to suppress and retaliate. Yang Chen did not care about these little tricks, but he did not want his master to be disturbed by these people and ruin his mood for no reason. With the head of the palace often coming over, which guy with no eyes dared to talk and move around? Moreover, if the head of the palace and Zhu Qintao came often, including Yang Chun, everyone would be able to get close to them. If there was a problem in cultivation, they could ask them for advice. Could it be that as the palace master, if the disciples came to ask for advice, could they be thrown out? Don't look at Yang Chen's cultivation experience as a great principal golden immortal, but it was limited to the fire cultivation. The cultivation experience of other high-level spiritual power was completely absent. If he could get advice from others, Yang Chen was also eager. Are you going to use all these here? Since this plan was made, the head of the palace did not mind that the conditions here were better. He casually asked a question, but did not wait for Yang Chen to answer. He had already started. The 5 elements spirit marrow was used to optimize the spiritual veins. The higher the cultivation base, the better the effect. The palace master was, of course, the most appropriate. However, there was still a little bit of regret in his words. I asked the palace master to take action. Yang Chen hurriedly bowed and replied. He had already understood the meaning of the palace master's words. He didn't mind using a little 5 elements spirit marrow to exchange for the favor of most people in Chunyang Palace. Therefore, he took out a chinquin bag and respectfully held it with both hands and sent it to the palace master. These are the gifts of this disciple to the sect. Please accept them. There are more? Everyone was used to Yang Chen's generosity. They were just surprised in their hearts, but no one said it out. The palace master was very surprised. He took it and explored it with his spiritual awareness. He was stunned again. In the chinquin bag, there were also 100,000 5 elements spirit marrow. The palace master thought a little and already understood the meaning of Yang Chun. He nodded to Yang Chun and put away the chinquin bag. In this case, I will exempt you from the contribution of entering and exiting my Chunyang Palace Scriptures Pavilion in the future. In addition, I will allow you to enter my Chunyang Palace Secret Pavilion once. Yes, Palace Master. Yang Chen didn't thank him. This was what he got with 100,000 spiritual marrow. He felt at ease and didn't need to thank him. The Palace Master had these 100,000 spirit essences, but he was sure that all the imbalances in the pure Yang Palace would be completely suppressed. Although Yang Chen found this place and built his own cave residence, there were many jealous people. Today they would talk about this, and tomorrow they would talk about that, which would inevitably cause a lot of trouble. These were enough to shut everyone's mouth. While the palace lord was muttering to himself in delight, the 100,000 pieces of spirit essence on the ground seemed to have grown legs of their own as they separated according to their different attributes. Then, they flew up high and plunged into the newly opened exit of the earth vein. All is well. The master acted so quickly. The palace master directly said the result. Remember to leave a room for me. In addition, prepare a few more guest rooms, which may be useful. Chapter 185. The palace master's words had already set the tone for the privileges of the fierce sun courtyard in the future. In addition to the people that Yang Chun had invited at the beginning, other people who wanted to enter the fierce sun courtyard in the future would be rewarded after making meritorious deeds. Of course, Yang Chun would not only invite the palace master, Zhu Chuntao would also leave a room for him. Of course, Meng Xian of the Law Enforcement Hall would also have a room. The Foreign Affairs Hall Master Su Qingxin, plus the current Fierce Sun Hall Master Qiaoming. Since it was called the Fierce Sun Courtyard, the Fierce Sun Hall Master would not be unreasonable. He believed that with the care of these people, there would not be any major disturbances in the Fierce Sun Courtyard in the future. As for the Hall Master of the Bright Moon Hall, Liang Xiaoming, didn't he have to face the wall and reflect on himself? When he came out, he would pretend forget. Who could say anything? Liang Xiaoming still had the nerve to run over and ask a junior for it. With the newly opened underground spirit vein and the enhancement and optimization of 100,000 pieces of spirit marrow, these people in the Fierce Sun Courtyard were so happy that they did not know what to say. Under Gao Yu's instructions, everyone found their own room and then began to cultivate in a hurry. Some time ago, they had been building the villa, and now they had the time to feel the complete spirit vein here. For Yang Chun, several times in a row, everyone was used to the surprises he could always bring to everyone. However, everyone was very grateful to Yang Chun. If it wasn't for Yang Chun, everyone would not have such a good immortal's cave to cultivate in. Even their slaves were also touched by the light, and the treatment was better than most of the masters in the Pure Yang Palace. Seeing that everyone had begun to settle down, Yang Chun was also gratified. This was the first gift he had prepared for his master, a better cultivation environment, and the first stronghold for him to take revenge on the Taishaman in the future. A cunning rabbit has 3 burrows, and the Chunyang Palace was the first. The Taishaman was not a small sect. It was a lower realm sect of the Xiantian sect in the immortal world. It could be said to be the foundation of the Xiantian sect, and it was one of the major forces in charge of the heavenly court. It was simply impossible for one person to deal with it. Yang Chun needed to gather all the forces he could in order to complete it. It took Yang Chun 10 years to become a disciple of his master again. Next, Yang Chun's goal was how to let Master Gaoyu realize that her innate fire spirit root was actually not as good as her acquired water spirit root, and change to the water attribute cultivation method. This was an arduous task, asking a Jidan stage master to give up his original cultivation base and then start to practice another attribute cultivation method from the beginning. This was by no means a few words. He believed that even if the current head of the palace issued an order, Gaoyu would not necessarily recultivate. Not only did this require a deeper relationship between the two parties, but it also required a suitable opportunity. Obviously, it was not the right time to become the disciple. Fortunately, Yang Chun was patient and determined. Even if it took another 10 years, Yang Chun could afford to wait. Moreover, now even if Gaoyu did not change to the water cultivation method, in the future, her fire attribute cultivation could also reach the nascent soul realm, so there was no need to worry about her safety for the time being. Next, Yang Chun plunged into the Scriptures Pavilion at Chunyang Palace and once again began his daily life of reading. When the master of Chunyang Palace returned to Chunyang Palace, he immediately informed the entire sect of Yang Chen's offering of 100,000 spirit essence. In this way, everyone praised him, and everyone could get benefits. Who didn't know how to praise him verbally? The manager of the Scriptures Pavilion also received the instructions of the palace master and was very polite to Yang Chun. After the news of Yang Chun refining the heaven-seizing pill came back, Chunyang Palace knew that Yang Chun had read a lot of books and had memorized the Scriptures Pavilion of the 9 Earth Mountain Villa. With this precedent, it was natural to come to the Scriptures Pavilion of Chunyang Palace. After declining the manager's good intention to take Yang Chun to visit the Scriptures Pavilion, Yang Chun came to the Scriptures Pavilion alone. The Scriptures Pavilion of the inner mountain gate of Chunyang Palace was completely different from the Scriptures Pavilion of the 9 Earth Mountain Villa, but the scale was more than 100 times larger. There were 100,000 jade slips in the 9 Earth Mountain Villa, but there were more than 10 million here. Zither, chess, calligraphy, painting, medicine, divination, astrology, everything. There were almost all kinds of jade slips. Moreover, one couldn't just casually look at any jade slip here. There were some jade slips that recorded local customs and scenery that were open to everyone, but jade slips that were related to cultivation methods, elixirs, artifact refinement arrays, and so on, could only be accessed if one had the corresponding cultivation level to open the protective restriction. After Yang Chun came in, he went straight to the cultivation method area. There were only a few cultivation methods of the yin and yang 5-element secret art suitable for cultivation after the foundation establishment stage. The others were still for the qi refining stage. Although the other attributes of the cultivation methods had not yet reached the foundation establishment stage, Yang Chun also had to prepare some profound cultivation methods for himself to prepare for a rainy day. In his previous life, Yang Chun had always focused on the cultivation of the fire attribute and rarely dabbled in other attributes, resulting in a pitiful number of cultivation methods in other aspects in his memory. Now, entering the scriptures pavilion of Chunyang Palace was like a poor boy entering a treasure house. Yang Chun would certainly not be polite. With the yin and yang 5-element secret art in hand, what restriction below the Jiedan stage could stop Yang Chun from reading? In the cultivation method area, the cultivation methods below the foundation establishment stage, Yang Chun simply looked at them one by one. With a sweep of his spiritual awareness, the content of the cultivation method immediately entered his mind, and then began to analyze the advantages and disadvantages of the cultivation method. With the cultivation experience of the great principle Golden Immortal, combined with the previous experience of practicing the yin and yang 5-element secret art, he could immediately analyze the characteristics of this cultivation method. Whether it was suitable for him, what were the flaws, Yang Chun could basically give a direction for modification now. If it was suitable for himself, Yang Chun would immediately remember it in his heart. The powerful effect of the 3 purities secret art, in addition to being far beyond the spiritual awareness of others, was far beyond the memory of others. In just 2 days, Yang Chun had memorized no less than hundreds of sets of cultivation methods. The improvement of the realm of cultivation brought not only the improvement of spiritual power, but also the speed of reading the jade slips. Every day, Yang Chun only stayed in the scriptures pavilion for 2 hours, and when the time came, he left directly. Back to the fierce sun courtyard to cultivate the yin and yang 5-element secret art, the heavenly spirit treasure refining secret art, and the earth fiend sacrificial formation secret art took turns to refine the profound spirit furnace and the sword sheath, and then a universe treasure raising secret art. After each such cycle, the state of the foundation stage began to stabilize rapidly, and the spiritual power began to increase in an orderly manner, preparing to hit the second level of the foundation stage. On the second day after the opening of the fierce sun courtyard, Gaoyu went to a sect internal meeting at the level of the Jiedan stage in the Chunyang Palace. When she came back and saw Yang Chun, she directly said there are a lot of people coveting the courtyard, and the reward that the palace master gave you to enter the secret pavilion has also been questioned. Chapter 186. The fierce sun courtyard had indeed caused a great dispute within the Chunyang Palace. A spiritual vein comparable to the spiritual vein of the main hall of the Chunyang Palace had been discovered. It was definitely a big deal in any sect. However, such a spiritual vein was actually occupied by a Jiedan stage master with a few disciples in the foundation stage. Even their servants who had not reached the foundation stage had taken advantage of it. How could this not make many people jealous? The sect's general meeting was to discuss this matter. In addition to those who were in seclusion and going out, the grandmasters and ancestors who stayed in the Chunyang Palace all appeared and launched a huge discussion in the main hall of the Chunyang Palace. Of course, before this, the head of the palace first announced the 100,000 5-element spirit essence that Yang Chun had offered. Naturally, the reward promised by the head of the palace was not concealed. This is unfair, and it will chill the hearts of the disciples. Immediately, someone jumped out to oppose it, and it was Liang Xiaoming, the master of the Bright Moon Palace, who had a relatively high status. Although he was facing the wall and reflecting on his mistakes, he He was allowed to participate in this sect's general meeting. In fact, this was originally instigated by him. After learning about the news of the fierce sun courtyard, especially after the discovery of a spiritual vein comparable to the main vein of the Chunyang Palace, Liang Xiaoming had an idea. Even if he was facing the wall and reflecting on his mistakes, he still mobilized his own power and convened the sect's general meeting. Meiqing Mountain is originally the Chunyang Palace. Any spiritual vein found should belong to the Chunyang Palace and should not be occupied by a few juniors. Liang Xiaoming's words represented the voice of a large group of Chunyang Palace disciples. Everyone was jealous of the abundant spiritual power resources of the spiritual vein, but they needed a high-sounding excuse. The fierce sun courtyard did not say that it would be separated from the Chunyang Palace. Of course, it is still the Chunyang Palace. The head of the palace seemed to have figured out a lot of things. In the face of Liang Xiaoming's doubts, he just gave a faint answer. Behind him, there were also several nascent soul stage elders who had been in seclusion and did not meddle in other people's business. This time, they were instigated by Liang Xiaoming. As for being occupied by a few juniors, this earth vein was originally discovered by them, and I also allowed them to build their own cave abodes in Meiqing Mountain. They didn't violate the rules, nor did they violate the sect rules, so how can they talk about occupying it? What should I do, or shouldn't I do? In response to Liang Xiaoming's statement, the palace master lightly retorted, Master Liang, could it be that you want to rob a few disciples of their belongings? Since they are the disciples of Chunyang Palace, they should think for our Chunyang Palace. This Terra vein should be shared by the disciples of Chunyang Palace, instead of being monopolized by a few people. Liang Xiaoming did not beat around the bush and went straight to the point. At least half of the people present had the same thought as him. Everyone was thinking about how to say it. With Liang Xiaoming taking the lead, there were naturally people who agreed. The disciples of Chunyang Palace should share what they have discovered with the sect. This is good. The palace master nodded, glanced at several nascent soul stage elders, and slowly said, Yangchun has already offered 100,000 five-element spirit marrow to my Chunyang Palace, which is considered to be shared with the sect. I don't know how much spirit marrow did Master Liang offer to the sect when he came out of the Immortal falling abyss. With just one sentence, Liang Xiaoming's face turned red. In the past, he got tens of thousands of spirit marrow from the Immortal falling abyss. Later, he and several other brothers worked together to optimize his own cave abode spiritual vein. When did he hand over half of it to the sect? We are talking about the present. A nascent soul stage elder behind the palace master said, Let the past be in the past. Elder Lin is right. Palace master Zhang Jiao immediately took over the topic of Elder Lin Yinfeng. The past, let it be in the past. Yangqin's discovery of the spiritual vein was also a matter of half a month ago. Now, there is no need to discuss it, right? Lin Yinfeng directly shut up and stopped talking. He was an elder, but he was only an elder, not a palace master. Now that the palace master said this, it was obvious that he was already a little annoyed. Some disputes could happen at the elders' meeting, but they could not sing a different tune with the palace master at the sect meeting. Liang Xiaoming thought that Elder Lin could pull back a city for him, but the palace master climbed up the pole and turned Yangqin's spiritual vein into a thing of the past. How could this make Liang Xiaoming satisfied? Seeing that Elder Lin had somewhat calmed down, Liang Xiaoming had to say again, Palace Master, you can't say that. A few pieces of spirit marrow will not have any impact on my Chunyang Palace, but a main vein is different. He is a disciple of the foundation stage. It is definitely a ways to use this main vein. It should be used by people who need it more. AI. The palace master sighed softly, and he was very unhappy with Liang Xiaoming's attitude. To say that the relationship with Taishiman was the most intimate. In Chunyang Palace, it was Liang Xiaoming. Maybe Chu Heng's initial difficulty with Yangchun was benefited from Liang Xiaoming. It's just that there has been no evidence, and the palace master did not want to move him. But unexpectedly, he became more and more excessive. The Grand Master of the peak Jidan stage began to embarrass a younger generation disciple everywhere. It was really disappointing. Gao Yu, as the person involved, had the qualification to attend the sect meeting, but had no right to speak. Looking at Liang Xiaoming targeting Yang Chun like this, with her character, she couldn't help but refute. However, without waiting for Gao Yu to speak, the palace master had already asked again. If this is the case, Home Master Liang just got a superb flying sword 3 months ago. It is a waste for you, a Jidan stage master, to use it. There are still a few Yuanying stage ancestors of my sect who do not have such a good flying sword. Home Master Liang, shouldn't it be used by people who need it more? In terms of seniority, you are Yang Qin's uncle master. How can you set an example for the younger generation disciples? The same thing happening to others and happening to oneself were two completely different things. The top-grade flying sword that Liang Xiaoming had just obtained was of a higher grade than any of the flying swords he had used before. He was about to use the opportunity of facing the wall to completely refine it, so how could he be willing to obediently hand it over? Before waiting for Liang Xiaoming to think about how to deal with it, the palace master had made another decision. Since everyone is willing to do this, it is better for us to test it in the sect's Bright Moon Hall first. In the future, if the disciples of the Bright Moon Hall have any gains, all of them will be handed over to the sect. Waiting for the sect's distribution, no private possession is allowed. So let's try out for a few decades to see how the effect is. If the disciples of the Bright Moon Hall are united and sincerely supported and can make our sect flourish, we will hold another sect meeting and list this as the rule of my Chunyang Palace. How about it? These words came out, and without waiting for everyone to vote, the palace master added another condition. Those who agree to do this will also participate in the trial. As long as the effect is outstanding, it is okay to change the rules. After that, the palace master turned behind him. Facing several elders of the Yuanying stage, he smiled and asked several elders, "What do you think?" Chapter 187. This kind of condition, it would be strange if someone agreed to it. Everyone knew that it was easy to rob other people's things, but it was extremely difficult to hand over one's own things. Whoever agreed would hand over their own property to the sect, and then let the sect distribute it. Who was a fool? Gao Yu did not expect that the palace master would support Yang Qin so much. She was surprised and happy to sit quietly and did not say anything more. She just smiled and looked at the performance of the various people around her. Those who had previously supported Liang Xiaoming also reacted at this moment. If they agreed to Liang Xiaoming's proposal today and seized the feng shui vein discovered by Yang Chun, then the good things they found tomorrow could be taken away. The palace master obviously considered this problem and rejected Liang Xiaoming's proposal. Liang Xiaoming himself did not make a decision. If he wanted to share Yang Qin's feng shui vein with the sect, his best flying sword would have to be taken away and shared with the sect. The sharing of the spiritual power of the feng shui vein was only a matter of how much it was absorbed. But if the flying sword was given to others, it could be taken away and he would not leave a little bit. If he didn't give it, the suggestion was put forward by himself. If he gave it, he was reluctant to give it up. Moreover, once he agreed, it meant that all the gains of the Bright Moon Palace for decades must belong to the sect, not to mention others. Liang Xiaoming could not guarantee that he could bear the pressure of the disciples of the Bright Moon Palace. Now this matter really put Liang Xiaoming in a dilemma. Don't look at him as a Jidan stage master. He was still suffocated to the point that his face was flushed and he was at a loss. Several elders who originally wanted to support Liang Xiaoming were all silent at the moment. When they were encouraged by Liang Xiaoming before, they thought that the discovery of this feng shui vein could greatly enhance the strength of the Chunyang Palace, and they did not consider too much. But now that the palace master said this truth, they were all old and experienced people. How could they not know the key? The so-called feng shui vein or spiritual power were secondary things. For a sect, the disciples of the sect were the most important. If all the disciples were disloyal, then the sect would not be far from decline. If he did not have enough earth veins, he could go outside to look for them. However, if he lost the will of the people, it would be impossible to gather it back. The silence lasted for a long time. No one spoke, which meant that no one agreed with the opinion of the head of the palace. In the past, I always thought that cultivators should follow the heavenly Tao and focus on fate. They should have less greed and jealousy. Palace Master Zhang Jiao looked at the crowd, and his eyes shot a ray of light. No matter where he looked, people would bow their heads and dare not look at the palace master. The palace lord's words were spoken slowly. Many people trembled when they heard it, as if they had comprehended something. Today I am very disappointed. The disciples present are either Jiedan or Yuanying stage ancestors, but they are greedy for a junior in the foundation establishment stage. The voice of the head of the palace suddenly became louder, with a huge anger directly burning in all directions. Is my Chunyang palace a famous righteous sect or a demonic cultivator? The rules of my Chunyang palace are not allowed to kill my fellow disciples. What is it to snatch the things of the younger generation of the same sect? The anger of a Yuanying stage master, the terrifying pressure directly covered the entire Chunyang palace. Whether it was a formal disciple or a servant, all of them were silent and did not dare to make any sound or make any movement. Today you robbed a junior's things, then tomorrow you can rob a senior's things. Today is Yang Chun, tomorrow it will be you. So everyone grabs and grabs. One day, when my Chunyang palace faces a disaster, who will stand up to protect my sect? The head of the palace was angry that these people did not see the general situation. Or when your own life is hanging by a thread, who can you count on to help? No one dared to look up. It was the first time that the head of the palace was so angry in front of everyone. Even those who did not intend to support Liang Xiaoming bowed their heads. The palace master's abuse made everyone understand a lot of things. Although they were scolded, fortunately, today the palace master protected Yang Chun, and tomorrow he would be able to protect each of them. The spiritual power of the fierce sun courtyard is rich. Everyone has a chance. After the slap, naturally he would also give a sweet date. The palace master said, in the future, if the disciples of the Chunyang palace make enough contributions, they could be allowed to cultivate in the fierce sun courtyard for a year as a reward for the disciples of the sect. If you want to enter the fierce sun courtyard, you should work hard on this. If he gave everyone hope, there would be people who would work hard. Does anyone have anything to say? If not, go back to practice. Perhaps after the head of the palace was angry, he was no longer full of anger, and the pressure that made people afraid slowly dissipated. Only then did the people in the Chunyang palace dare to move a little. About the spiritual veins, this disciple did not consider it well, and I asked the palace master to punish me. Liang Xiaoming quickly bowed his head and admitted his mistake. At this time, if he did not show his attitude, he would definitely be hostile to many people. But if he did not consider it well, he could give him a very decent way out. After all, people were not gods, and they would always make mistakes. Moreover, from the very beginning, he had used the pretense of thinking for the sake of the sect. It was just a lack of consideration, and it was not a huge crime. However, the palace master, is it too much to allow Yang Chun to enter the secret pavilion once? This time, Liang Xiaoming did not target Yang Chen's spiritual veins, but changed to attack the reward for Yang Chun. Only the disciples who have made great contributions to the sect can have such treatment. Yang Chun only handed over 100,000 spiritual essence, and he is only allowed to contribute spirit stones. You should not make an exception to let him enter the secret pavilion, right? The secret pavilion was the core place of the Chunyang palace, and one was only allowed to choose once. Those who did not make great contributions would not be rewarded. Liang Xiaoming's words were well-founded and well-organized, so that people could not say any mistakes. About the secret pavilion, I will discuss it with the elders again. This time, the palace master grasped all the right to speak and directly rejected Liang Xiaoming's doubts. However, Liang Xiaoming was still a little happy. After all, those elders would not be too happy after this time. Yang Chen's opportunity to enter the secret pavilion was basically lost. After the sect meeting, Gao Yu came back and saw Yang Chen for the first time and told Yang Chen this. After that, she patted Yang Chen's shoulder and encouraged him with a master's style. The head of the palace has given you a lot of pressure this time. You have to cultivate carefully, and you can't disappoint the great expectations of the head of the palace and the master. Of course, Yang Chen immediately made a solemn vow, but his face showed a smile of success. Chapter 188. Gao Yu would not know what the palace master and the Yuanying stage elders said after the sex meeting. Other people probably would not know, but Yang Chen could guess. As Yang Chen expected, when the head of the palace and several elders met in the small council hall of the Pure Yang Palace, there was immediately an elder who blamed the head of the palace master. How can you protect a disciple in the foundation stage like this today? Even reprimanding all the Jidan stage disciples? Although the other elders did not speak, everyone had the same expression on their faces. Today, the palace master was furious, and it was very awe-inspiring. However, these awe-inspiring airs could not be put in front of these elders. They just did not refute the palace master on the spot. After all, he was the palace master, and they could not damage his prestige. It's very simple. After the palace master sat down, he faintly replied, because Elder Wu Xiong has not yet ascended. As soon as this was said, several elders immediately understood. Yang Chen helped Elder Wu Xiong to refine the heaven-seizing pill, which was now a well-known thing in the world. Although everyone did not know what happened in the refining process, according to rumors, Yang Chen played an irreplaceable role. Wu Xiong even released words to protect Yang Chen, which had fully explained the importance of Yang Chen. Since everyone was not Wu Xiong's opponent, everyone still had to give face to the people under Wu Xiong's protection. Especially inside the Chunyang Palace, this was a great opportunity to make friends with Wu Xiong. The palace master's consideration was absolutely correct. In this case, the matter of the secret pavilion is still handled according to the previous procedures. There is no need to say anything more. Several elders nodded, and Elder Lin Yinfeng directly summed up on behalf of everyone. Before Elder Wu Xiong ascends, don't let anyone make Yang Chen feel wronged. However, in this way, Yang Chen's cultivation will not have any bumps, isn't it harming him? The elder at the side had a different opinion. In my opinion, it's better to take care of him appropriately. Let him face what he needs to face. As long as we support him in times of life and death, it'll be fine. As for other times, it's better to let him deal with it himself. Everyone was a nascent soul realm master, so they naturally knew that this elder's words were reasonable, so they all nodded after listening. No matter what, Yang Chen was still a disciple of the sect. Someone might even be Yang Chen's grandmaster. As elders, it was impossible for them to deliberately harm their own disciples. When Elder Wu ascends, how should he treat Yang Chen? The one who asked was Yang Chen's master ancestor, Gao Yu's master Wang Yang. In the previous discussion, he had never spoken. It was related to his own apprentices and grand disciples. Since the head of the palace had spared no effort in supporting them, he did not come out. However, upon hearing that the palace lord was only supporting Elder Wu Xiong because he had yet to ascend, he was a little displeased. Thus, he began to ask the palace lord about his future plans. The same, vigorously cultivate and vigorously maintain. The head of the palace replied without hesitation. Everyone knew the relationship between Yang Chen and Wang Yang, and no one said anything. Hearing the palace master say this, at least Lin Yunfeng's face still showed a hint of disapproval. Yang Chen climbed the heaven ladder. His will was tenacious, he got the spirit essence, and he also knew to hand it over to the sect, and he succeeded in building his foundation without anyone's guidance. With such excellent perception, he is a genius disciple. The palace master smiled and replied faintly, if we don't train such a disciple, should we train Chu Hong who deceives his master? In one sentence, everyone had no opinion. What the palace master said was reasonable. A loyal and talented disciple was of course worth training, and it should be vigorously cultivated. This was the future of Chunyang Palace. At this point, they only wanted to be able to attack the realm of the Deshang stage and the glory of the sect. How could they be jealous of a younger generation disciple? Even if there is no such reason, In fact, I still have to vigorously defend Yang Chun. After giving a high-sounding reason, the palace master did not mind telling his plans to the elders. He could see that some elders disagreed with this, but they did not express it. Of course, he had to unify everyone's attitude. When they heard the palace master say this, the elders were stunned. Besides this reason, was there any other reason? Everyone understood the character of the palace master. He would not take care of a younger generation disciple for no reason. Everyone pricked up their ears and listened to the reason of the palace master. If this reason could not convince Elder Lin, it was estimated that Elder Lin might retarget Yang Chun one day in the future. Yang Chun will refine the heaven-seizing pill. A few short words made everyone feel enlightened, and they instantly figured it out. To put it bluntly, if I don't vigorously protect Yang Chun and cultivate Yang Chun, when I need the heaven-seizing pill, who will help me refine it? If I don't use the disciple of my sect, do I have to beg those guys? All the elders, including Elder Lin Yunfeng, were enlightened. Everyone, including Elder Lin Yunfeng, looked enlightened. If it was said that Yang Chun was a disciple worthy of training, so everyone did not completely agree with it. This reason was enough to let everyone put down any prejudices and wholeheartedly support Yang Chun. Everyone was in the stage of the Yuanying stage to the Deshang stage, and the ultimate goal was all to ascend. But everyone knew the difficulty of ascension. If they had the help of the heaven-seizing pill when they ascend, wouldn't it be much smoother? Yang Chun played an irreplaceable role in the refining of the heaven-seizing pill. Didn't that mean that Yang Chun really knew the refining method of the heaven-seizing pill? Whether it was public or private, there was no reason to fall out with a younger generation disciple. Even Lin Yunfeng was the same. The reason why he would have a different opinion was because of Liang Xiaoming's instigation. He was a Yuanying stage ancestor. How could he have any contradiction with a younger generation disciple who had only been in the sect for 10 years? No one knew what the palace master and the Yuanying stage elders said, but the palace master and the elders unanimously agreed that Yang Chun could enter the secret pavilion once as a reward. In the same way, no one would know that Yang Chun had been unanimously favored by the palace master and the elders. Yang Chun could guess some of it, but he would not talk to anyone. He still maintained the previous routine of the past few days. Every day, he would go to the scriptures pavilion to read books, and then come back to practice, never stopping. The interior of the Pure Yang Palace seemed to be calm, and the occasional small waves also calmed down silently under the anger of the head of the palace. But it was no longer the Chunyang Palace of his previous life. Quietly, some subtle changes had taken place in Chunyang Palace from top to bottom. No one noticed it, except for Yang Chun. The Chunyang Palace of this life was slowly turning toward a road preset by Yang Chun. Chapter 189. Because of the cultivation realm, although Yang Chun found the various cultivation methods suitable for the foundation stage in the scriptures pavilion, except for the fire attribute, Yang Chun has not yet built the foundation for the other attributes, and he cannot incorporate these higher-level cultivation methods into the Yin-Yang 5-element secret art. This has become the weakest link of Yang Chun now, because the Yin-Yang 5-element secret art has not been fully built, resulting in many things that cannot be used, even including the Heavenly Spirit Treasure Refining Secret Art and the Earth Fiend Sacrificial Formation Secret Art. Now that he has been apprenticed, Yang Chun has seen the master he has been thinking about day and night. He has become her apprentice again, and he has successfully built the Fierce Sun Courtyard. His long-cherished wish has been achieved, and it has become an urgent matter to improve his cultivation base. Strictly speaking, Yang Chun's fire attribute foundation stage was only the 4th fire attribute. The acquisition of the Earth Core fire greatly improved Yang Chun's cultivation base on the 4th fire attribute. In the previous life, Yang Chun did not strictly distinguish the Yin and Yang attributes when he was cultivating, but now, because of the Yin-Yang 5-element secret art, he has to distinguish them clearly. That is to say, if the 3rd fire attribute spirit power is added, Yang Chun has 9 attributes of spirit power that need to improve his cultivation base and reach the foundation stage. After the first foundation stage, in Elder Wu's manner, Yang Chun was basically consolidating the foundation stage. Because he was afraid that Elder Wu Xiong would discover the yin-yang 5 elements secret art in his body, he had not cultivated it. So during the period from the foundation stage to the refining of the heaven-seizing pill, the yin-yang 5 elements secret art did not progress and remained at the level of the 9th layer of qi refining. However, Yang Chen knew that each of his own attributes of spirit power foundation stage could drive the other attributes of spirit power to a small extent. That is to say, as long as he has 1 or 2 more kinds of spirit power foundation stage, then the remaining yin-yang 5 element spirit power can reach the peak of qi refining. At that time, as long as he refines enough foundation stage pills for himself, it would not be a problem for him to build the foundation stage. Now for Yang Chun, the simplest thing was to improve the 3rd fire spirit power. Whether it was experience or external things, it was easygoing. In his previous life, he was a fire cultivator, and the Sun True Fire was of the 3rd fire attribute. These two together could quickly make Yang Chen's 3rd fire spirit power build the foundation. Of course, with Yang Chen's current cultivation, it was impossible for him to absorb and refine the true sun fire. In his previous life, when Yang Chen was in the middle stage of the Gold Core realm, he had obtained the sun's true fire by chance. The process of absorbing the sun's true fire was also very dangerous, and he had almost lost his life. However, the success of the absorption was also extremely shocking. Not only did it help Yang Chen's nascent soul ascend, but it also allowed Yang Chen to enter the immortal world. The true fire of the sun was extremely precious, and Helian Yin had most likely obtained it by refining pills for others. But now, it had actually helped Yang Chen. Although Yang Chen could not absorb the sun true fire at the moment, the profound spirit furnace could. As long as the absorption is successful, the grade of the profound spirit furnace will also be greatly improved. After staying in the Scriptures Pavilion for a whole month, Yang Chen stopped going to the Scriptures Pavilion to read. During this period, he also made enough preparations before greeting his master and other friends, and then began to retreat to absorb the true fire of the sun. The small oil lamp that Wu Xiong used to seal the true fire of the sun, Yang Chen carefully took it out of the merit ring. When it was placed in front of him, no one would believe that such a small oil lamp that was flickering and about to be extinguished actually had the fire of the true fire of the sun. The process of absorption was very similar to that of absorbing the earth core fire, but there were also some differences. After all, the level of the true fire of the sun was 2 grades higher than that of the earth core fire, and the 5th grade fire seed was a rare flame even in the spiritual world. The power was without waves, and with a little carelessness, even Yang Chen's profound spirit furnace would disappear without a trace. Fortunately, Yang Chen had the true fire of the sun in his previous life. It was estimated that no one in the spiritual world could match him in familiarity with this kind of flame. After carefully refining the profound spirit furnace with the celestial spirit treasure refining secret art again, he used the universe treasure raising secret art to maintain it again, and then slowly controlled the profound spirit furnace to approach the small flame. A little bit, Yang Chen just approached the moment, controlling the profound spirit furnace to extract a little bit of the true fire of the sun from the flame. This was even more subtle than the one extracted when Yang Chen absorbed the earth core fire before, not even 1/10 of it at that time. With just this little flame, Yang Chen could feel that the profound spirit furnace was surrounded by flames. In an instant, the temperature of the profound spirit furnace was raised to a level that people could not touch. The entire furnace body of the profound spirit furnace became extremely hot, as if the whole furnace would melt in the next moment. This was the most dangerous time. If the fire could not be controlled, the profound spirit furnace would be burned alive. Yang Chen was already prepared. He took out the cyan crystal profound gold box that had been prepared for a long time and carefully placed it in the profound spirit furnace. Yes, Yang Chen was planning to absorb the true fire of the sun, take the opportunity to refine the cyan crystal profound gold, and improve the material of the profound spirit furnace by the way. The cyan crystal profound gold was not something that could be refined by ordinary flames. Even if it was the true fire of the sun, if it was not controlled by people, it would take enough fire and time to refine it. Now, a little flame could be absorbed by the cyan crystal profound gold for most of the heat, but allowed the profound spirit furnace to take the opportunity to absorb the fire. Yang Chun had no way to refine such a large piece of cyan crystal profound gold before. Although the earth core fire was blazing, it was only suitable for refining medicinal materials and earthy things. There was no way to refine this high-level cyan crystal profound gold. Sure enough, Yang Chen's method worked. The temperature of the profound spirit furnace no longer rose, and even became cooler and cooler. However, the cyan crystal profound gold box in the profound spirit furnace began to slowly change. The rust wrapped on the outside was peeling off little by little. Those were the impurities of the cyan crystal profound gold. The old mountain god could not purify it and left it on the box, so it formed rust. Now, these impurities were slowly being removed under the burning of the true fire of the sun. After the little flame was absorbed by the profound spirit furnace, Yang Chun controlled the profound spirit furnace to peel off a little from the flame, and so on. The profound spirit furnace absorbed more and more flames, and the box made of cyan crystal profound gold gradually changed color. After a batch of impurities was precipitated, the box slowly turned red, and the heat was amazing, but the shape of the box did not change at all. This characteristic of the cyan crystal profound gold was most suitable for refining high-temperature pill furnaces and the flying sword of the fire cultivator. It was just right for the profound spirit furnace. Of course, with such a large piece, Yang Chun could not use it all. He only needed to use 1/10 of it, and it was enough to make the profound spirit furnace be reborn. In this boring cycle, the flame on the oil lamp that sealed the true fire of the sun became smaller and smaller, and finally disappeared completely. Chapter 190. Every absorption of the flame, for Yang Chun, was a process of tempering the third fire spirit power in his body. The flame of the true sun fire was too fierce, and Yang Chun did not dare to absorb the flame into his body now. But this did not prevent Yang Chun from sending his spirit power to the flame of the true sun fire to burn and then take it back into his body. After the spirit power burned by the true sun fire, at least 90% was consumed, but the remaining trace was not known how much purer it was. For every slight absorption, Yang Chun would lose 90% of the third fire spirit power. Fortunately, the spiritual power here was rich, and Yang Chun had enough profound yang fruit to supplement it, so he would soon be able to recover before the next absorption of the true sun fire. Every inch would undergo such a tempering, and Yang Chun's third fire spirit power was simply being tempered by the true sun fire. After the recovery of the spirit power, it would soon be consumed by the burning, and then it would be replenished, and then it would be tempered again. After being burned by the true sun fire, the remaining essence of the spirit power was getting more and more, and this part of the most essence of the third fire spirit power was even purer than after being tempered by the yin and yang reverse 5 elements. The quality of the spirit power was getting higher and higher, and the spirit power of the third fire attribute was also getting higher and higher. When the third fire spirit power was burned by the true sun fire, it finally reached the critical point of eruption. For Yang Chun, there was no such thing as the state of mind cultivation could not keep up. As long as the spirit power cultivation base was raised enough, he could easily overcome various bottlenecks. In the fierce sun courtyard, the spiritual power of the earth vein seemed to be suddenly attracted by something and madly gathered towards the hut where Yang Chun was in seclusion. The spiritual power of the earth vein, which was enough for several Yuanying stage masters to cultivate at the same time, was suddenly cut off, and all the spiritual power poured into the body of Yang Chun. The people in the fierce sun courtyard immediately noticed the abnormality here. This situation was not unfamiliar to everyone. It was clearly a phenomenon caused by someone communicating with heaven and earth when he built the foundation. After a while, it returned to normal. However, no one could figure out what was going on. Wasn't Yang Chun in the foundation stage? How could there be such a scene of communicating with heaven and earth? After building the foundation, the body would naturally absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Could it be that Yang Chun destroyed his own cultivation and built the foundation again? Everyone was suspicious, but no one rashly rushed in to disturb Yang Chun. Everyone understood the taboo of seclusion. What they were most afraid of was someone suddenly rushing in and disturbing them. Moreover, this situation was not a bad thing. Either Yang Chun had made some breakthrough again, and that was why this situation was triggered. Third Fire Spirit Power Foundation Establishment. Yang Chun's cultivation was upgraded to a whole level. When he built the foundation in Elder Wu Xiong's villa, he relied on the Earth Core Fire and the medicinal power of the best Emerald Jade Ganoderma. But now it was different. This time, he would rely on the Sun True Fire to crazily burn and temper the Third Fire Spirit Power before he built the foundation. The quality of the Third Fire Spirit Power was much purer than all other spirit powers, and it immediately occupied the upper hand among the Yin and Yang 5-element spirit power. The other Yin and Yang 5-element spirit power, in the process of communicating with heaven and earth, madly absorbed the spiritual energy of the earth vein. In a short period of time, enough spiritual power was absorbed, and the overall Yin and Yang 5-element secret art was upgraded to a level, reaching the peak state of the 10th layer of Qi refining. In the sea of consciousness, the long river of blood was darker. The surrounding space seemed to have expanded again in the process of building the foundation, and it had abruptly increased by at least 50%. Now, it looked like it was half the size of the Fierce Sun courtyard. Perhaps it was because Yang Chun only had the foundation of fire attribute spirit power. In the sea of consciousness, it was divided into very clear levels. The top was a burning sun phantom, and below the long river of blood, there was a long river of dark red flames, which was clearly the embodiment of the Sun True Fire and the Earth Core Fire. In the previous life, even if Yang Chun had the Sun True Fire, it was not reflected in the sea of consciousness. Now he had not collected the Sun True Fire, but there was already this mark in the sea of consciousness. In addition to the large size of the sea of consciousness and the long river of blood that could be turned into killing intent, other things could not be seen. At this time, the process of the profound spirit furnace absorbing the Sun True Fire was not completed, and Yang Chun did not dare to stop the process of absorption. After building the foundation, the third fire spirit power was more abundant, and each time the extraction of the Sun True Fire changed from a little bit to a trace, and the speed was almost 10 times faster. When the flame on the oil lamp completely disappeared, there was already a bright golden Sun True Fire in the profound spirit furnace. This group of Sun True Fire and the Earth Core Fire were in two different directions, but Yang Chun only needed to move which one he wanted to move, which one he wanted to move. He could move it like a finger. In the profound spirit furnace, the flame of the complete Sun True Fire began to burn the cyan crystal profound gold in the furnace. Under the control of Yang Chun, the square cyan crystal profound gold box, which had not changed for several months, had completely changed its shape and became a soft thing like dough. The profound spirit furnace was now connected with Yang Chen's mind. With just a little thought, the melted cyan crystal profound gold began to slowly divide into two halves. A large group quickly flew out of the furnace and began to cool down slowly, and the remaining small group began to melt more and more and began to integrate into the inside of the profound spirit furnace. The spiritual awareness provided by the powerful sea of consciousness was enough to make Yang Chun understand every place inside the profound spirit furnace thoroughly. The unstable places brought by the low-level materials were replaced by the cyan crystal profound gold, and then those original low-level materials, under the burning of the Sun True Fire, slowly precipitated out. This time, the absorption of the Sun True Fire was actually a process of absorbing the flame, refining the cyan crystal profound gold, and sacrificially refining the profound spirit furnace. Up to now, there was only one last step left. When the cyan crystal profound gold was completely integrated into the profound spirit furnace, the overall color of the profound spirit furnace began to change, turning into the light cyan color of the cyan crystal profound gold. Looking from a distance, the pill furnace did not seem to be metal, but became porcelain. Yang Chun then used the heavenly spirit treasure refining secret art and the earth fiend sacrificial formation secret art to refine it in turn. At this point, the sacrificial refining of the profound spirit furnace was completely completed. The combination of the sun true fire and the cyan crystal profound gold. One was a 5th grade fire seed, and the other was the best refining material in the mortal world. Even if it was any one of them, it could make the profound spirit furnace be reborn. Now, the power of the combination was almost doubled. At this moment, the profound spirit furnace was no less than the purple alchemy furnace used by Deng Ya. It just so happens that such a profound spirit furnace can be used to refine the 3rd grade medicinal pill, right? Yang Chun looked at the ceramic-like pill furnace in his hand with satisfaction and smiled slightly. The 3rd grade foundation building pill can make all my spiritual power build the foundation. Chapter 191. The continuous upgrade of the profound spirit furnace made Yang Chun have absolute confidence in refining the 3rd grade low-level medicinal pill at this moment, especially now that he has successfully built the foundation of the 3rd fire and 4th fire spiritual power. After the profound spirit furnace absorbed the sun true fire, the foundation establishment pill, which could be refined under the foundation stage, had absolute certainty. However, now Yang Chun would never easily refine a simple foundation establishment pill. You must know that the profound yang fruit in Yang Chen's hands was now 1,000 years old, and the other medicinal materials were also jaw-dropping. Such materials refining, if it was just an ordinary foundation establishment pill, wouldn't it seem that Yang Chen's means were too low? If it was before, the 3rd grade foundation establishment pill was enough to meet Yang Chen's current needs. As long as there were a few medicinal pills, Yang Chen's concentrated spiritual power could continue to build the foundation. However, now that Yang Chun has the Polite Divine Wood, he has a bolder idea. The Polite Divine Wood was a wood attribute divine object, and it was also the best wood attribute material in the mortal world of the 1st wood attribute. Yang Chun was considering whether he could directly add the wood attribute of the Polite Divine Wood to the foundation establishment pill to enhance his own 1st wood attribute spiritual power. This was something that Yang Chun had never done or thought about before. But Yang Chun knew that the world of cultivation was not static. There were innovations everywhere, and each martial arts sect was striving to carry forward all kinds of things in their own sect. Continuing the holy secret art was not strictly following the rules, but abandoning the shortcomings of the predecessors, enlarging the advantages, and becoming more excellent. This was the right way. Although the pill recipe of the foundation establishment pill was very fixed, different years of medicinal materials would definitely lead to different medicinal pills, and different refining techniques would also bring different effects. What Yang Chun was considering now was to make a foundation establishment pill specifically for his own 1st wood attribute spiritual power, and it was best to contain the spiritual power of the Polite Divine Wood. This was not an easy thing. To develop a new medicinal pill, it was necessary to do a lot of experiments. Of course, doing experiments would require a lot of materials. Fortunately, this was not a problem for Yang Chun. Whether it was the profound yang fruit or the leaves of the Polite Divine Wood, he now had enough materials to experiment. The experience from his past life and the large amount of reading he had done in the Sutra Pavilion in this life allowed Yang Chun to have a direction from the very beginning rather than blindly fumbling around. The refining technique was still the refining technique of building foundation Dan, but it was necessary to add the materials of Polite Divine Wood in a certain process. If others were to know that Yang Chun actually intended to use the Millennium Profound Yang Fruit and the Polite Divine Wood for the building foundation Dan experiment, it was not known how many alchemists and refiners would tremble and madly scold Yang Chun for being a wastrel. Whether it is the 1,000-year-old Profound Yang Fruit or the punlai divine wood, they're all things that people are envious of and can almost cause a bloody battle in the world. Yang Chun used them for experiments, which is simply not an ordinary wastrel. The condensation of the third fire spirit power made Yang Chun have a whole new concept. He did not expect that there would be such benefits through the profound spirit furnace. However, this also gave Yang Chun an inspiration. Since the third fire spirit power could be so condensed and pure, could the spirit power of the first wood attribute, with the help of the punlai divine wood, achieve such an effect? The profound spirit furnace absorbed the sun true fire for almost 10 months. The medicine garden's purified bottle, under the nourishment of the abundant spirit power in these months, has absorbed the spirit power in a controlled manner and has restored 3/4 of the spirit power. Yang Chun entered the medicine garden and looked at it. He was surprised to find that the medicine garden, after the integration of the punlai divine wood, a wood attribute divine object, required more spirit power, and it was no longer a waste of all the spirit power converted into water attribute spirit power. The punlai divine wood grew more and more lush, but the number did not increase. But the leaves were a lot more luxuriant, and the roots were more and more firmly rooted. And after the addition of the punlai divine wood, the growth of those medicines seemed to be more and more vigorous. Everything made Yang Chun very satisfied. With this idea, it did not mean that Yang Chun would refine it immediately. After 10 months of retreat, Yang Chun also needed to go out and relax. After his rebirth, Yang Chun had a new understanding of cultivation. It was not that he could improve his cultivation base by immersing himself in hard work every day. This was the action of Yang Chun reading books in the scriptures pavilion, and at the same time, Yang Chun did not spend his time on cultivation every day. Strange, how can you? Gao Yu looked at Yang Chun, who came to pay his respects to her master, and there was an unspeakable feeling. Yang Chun's cultivation base was still in the early stage of the foundation stage, but when she met him, there was a kind of smell of fire which made her, the Jidan stage master, very puzzled. What are you doing in retreat? Thank you, master, for your concern. This disciple just sacrificially refined my alchemy furnace. Half of Yang Chun's words were true. Absorbing the sun true fire and melting the cyan crystal profound gold was indeed sacrificially refining the profound spirit furnace. It was a bit general, but the fact was so. Gao Yu was still puzzled, especially the situation of Yang Chun's communication with heaven and earth during his retreat, which made her unable to explain. But Yang Chun didn't say it, and she wouldn't ask too much detail. Everyone knew that Yang Chun was special, and Gao Yu, as a master, understood it even more. For this apprentice under her own name, Gao Yu really didn't think about it, from which aspect she should start to teach Yang Chun. However, in the past few months, she also wanted to understand a lot, and it was better to let nature take its course. People who cultivate, each person has their own fate, and it can't be forced. Yang Chun, your situation is very special. Gao Yu did not shy away from her guilty conscience in front of Yang Chun. In fact, I don't have a good idea to guide you. I am just your nominal master. If you have any questions, you can ask us to discuss them, but I will not ask you how to cultivate. Perhaps you should learn from a better master, not me. Gao Yu was very calm, but Yang Chun liked it more and more. This was the responsible approach, rather than putting on a master's face and pointing it out. Yang Chun was also not polite, and immediately asked Gao Yu for a few questions on cultivation. In fact, these problems were problems that Gao Yu did not understand at the beginning of the previous life. Yang Chun's problems, and some of the possible ideas he provided, just gave Gao Yu a feeling of sudden enlightenment. She immediately ignored Yang Chun and began to comprehend. Now Yang Chun's approach was very contradictory. On the one hand, he hoped to be able to remind Gao Yu to let her cultivate the water attribute, but in action, he was helping her improve the cultivation of the fire attribute. But this was something that couldn't be helped. Yang Chun couldn't always inexplicably tell his master that she was not suitable for the fire cultivation and should be a water cultivation, right? Some trust and tacit understanding couldn't be built in a day or two. Yang Chun had to do this first. Of course, this was what he liked, and he could not ask for more to relive his master's love. Chapter 192. He needed an opportunity to resolve his master's matter. What Yang Chun needed to do now was to subtly develop a pure trust between him and his master, so that his master could trust him at any time. After bidding farewell to his master, Yang Chun was planning to go to the scripture pavilion. However, before he could leave the Fierce Sun courtyard, he was blocked by Gong Sunling in the courtyard. Junior brother Yang, you promised that you would take care of all the pills I need to go to the Immortal Falling Abyss. Gong Sunling did not pretend to be polite to Yang Chun. She directly stretched out her hand to ask Yang Chun for the pills. In any case, the Fierce Sun courtyard already owed Yang Chun a big favor, so Gong Sunling did not mind owing him a bit more. I plan to go to the Immortal Falling Abyss soon. Where are the pills you prepared for me? Are you sure you want to go to the Immortal Falling Abyss? Yang Chun frowned. He wanted to go to the Immortal Falling Abyss because he knew that there was a place where he could cheat. Secondly, there was the Earth Flame. Thirdly, he needed to kill a lot of people to fuse with the will of the Immortal Beheading stage. However, there was no need for Gong Sunling to take this risk. At the very least, in his previous life, Gong Sunling had never gone there. In Yang Chen's eyes, the Immortal Falling Abyss was a very ordinary place. However, in the eyes of ordinary cultivators, it was a truly dangerous place. Even immortals could fall there. Ordinary cultivators who entered the Immortal Falling Abyss would at most wander around Separation Village and wait for an opportunity to kill some underground spirit beasts to obtain some 5 elements spirit marrow. Only a few powerful Peak Foundation establishment experts would enter the depths. The people who chased after Yang Chun were this kind of people. However, Gong Sunling was clearly only at the early stage of chi refinement. Moreover, she had made plans to go to the Immortal Falling Abyss to gain experience. This was completely different from her previous life. Although Yang Chun was happy for Gong Sunling's change, perhaps this would prevent her from dying in the heavenly tribulation. However, it would add a lot of danger to Gong Sunling's cultivation path. I've thought about it. Perhaps if I concentrate on cultivating, I might be able to easily raise my cultivation level. Gong Sunling nodded seriously. However, I will never have the hardships and experiences that junior brother Yang has gone through. Even if I'm blessed with good karma and ascend to heaven, I'm just an ascetic cultivator who doesn't pay attention to what's going on outside, just like a walking corpse. I don't want to be like that. After saying this, Yang Chun was sure that Gong Sunling had thought about what her changes would bring to her in the future. As for Gong Sunling's own decision, Yang Chun couldn't say anything, although this was what he wanted to see. Of course, he could do something, for example, refining the pills that Gong Sunling needed to go to the Immortal Fallen Abyss. Give me 2 months. Yang Chun didn't say much, and just let Gong Sunling wait for 2 months. He wanted to refine enough pills for Gong Sunling to use for 10 years in the Immortal Fallen Abyss. Senior sister, I'll have to trouble you to go out and buy all the medicinal ingredients that can be used to refine the chi-nourishing pills and the essence-cultivating pills. All of them? Gong Sunling was shocked. How many spirit stones would it cost to buy such a huge amount of medicinal ingredients? She didn't have enough spirit stones to do these things. But she quickly stopped worrying. Yang Chun directly handed over a Chinquin bag. There are more than 10,000 kilograms of low-grade spirit stones in here. It should be enough to buy these medicinal ingredients. Seeing that Gong Sunling hesitated and didn't know whether to take it or not, Yang Chun smiled. Senior sister, I promise to cover all the medicinal ingredients you use. Senior sister won't let me be a person who goes back on his word, right? Gong Sunling hesitated for a moment, but finally took the Chinquin bag handed over by Yang Chun. Since she already owed him a favor, she would find a chance to make it up to him in the future. After looking at Yang Chun with a complicated expression, she didn't argue. She immediately turned around and flew away on her sword, hurrying to purchase medicinal ingredients. Returning to his room in a hurry, Yang Chun quickly called Shunda, Gu Kun, Yin, and Yuan Ting to his side. He pulled out a list and directly ordered, Shunda, Gu Kun, the 2 of you go buy all the medicinal ingredients in the Meiqing Mountains market. Along with the list, there were also 4 Chinquin bags. The 4 of them were slaves and didn't have Chinquin bags. Yang Chun had killed a lot of guys. Now he took out a few, erased the sect mark on them, and gave them to the 4 people. Helian, Yuan Ting, you prepare to refine pills with me. The 4 of them were slaves, so Yang Chun was not polite when he ordered them. Similarly, the 4 of them took the things given by Yang Chun and were just as quick, not as hesitant as Gong Sunling just now. Helian was once again able to witness Yang Chun refining medicinal pills, and it was the first time for Yuan Ting. Both women were very excited, especially Helian. She was focused on alchemy, and of course, she also heard the news that Yang Chun could refine the heaven-seizing pill. To be able to see Yang Chun refining pills for others, it was an opportunity that they couldn't ask for. Helian, pay more attention to my fire control technique. For his slaves, Yang Chun was not stingy with his advice. You're now diligent in practicing fire control, and you have a certain degree of mastery. After this refining, I will teach you how to refine the qi-seeking pill. In the future, the qi-seeking pill that Chunyang Palace needs will be refined by you. When he said this, Helian was so surprised that she almost cried out. Over the years, she served Yang Chun conscientiously, and when Yang Chun was not around, she also practiced fire control very hard, and now she finally got the reward. Yuan Ting looked at Helian enviously, and Yang Chun also saw her gaze. He smiled slightly and said, Yuan Ting, you don't have to be envious. You like to study arrays. There are a few jade slips about refining in the Sutra Depository. I will make a copy of them someday, and you can take a look first. Even if you're not a fire cultivator, you can also refine tools. Listening to Yang Chen's words, Yuan Ting's face couldn't help but show a surprised expression. Shinda and Gu Kun didn't say much. Maybe they were men, and not as good at expressing themselves as women, but their eyes also showed eagerness. The 4 slaves had been following Yang Chun for more than 11 years. After the first time, they were somewhat unconvinced. They had always been obedient, and they served him well without any complaints. Yang Chun observed them for so long, and finally affirmed their temperament. Of course, he had to cultivate his own servants. It just so happened that their hobbies were different. Helian refined pills, Yuan Ting refined tools, and Gu Kun studied arrays, while Shunda focused on cultivation. Each had their own characteristics, and Yang Chen didn't mind having a few more helpers around him. The few of you have been following me for more than 10 years, and now your cultivation has also improved. I can give you a promise. In order to stimulate them to make progress, Yang Chun decided to give them a huge hope. If your cultivation reaches the peak of qi refining, I can give each of you a 3rd revolution foundation building pill. Boom! The 4 slaves seemed to be suddenly frozen. They stared at Yang Chun and could no longer move. Chapter 193. The 3 Revolutions Foundation Establishment Pill. Even if this cultivator was a blockhead, a slag, as long as he reached the peak of the qi refining stage, as long as he took the 3 Revolutions Foundation Establishment Pill, he could smoothly build the foundation. Shunda and the other 4 people, in the past 10 years, under the occasional guidance of Yang Chun, had cultivated to the realm of the 6th layer of qi refining. From the 3rd layer to the 6th layer, it took him 10 years. Speaking of which, this was already considered a pretty good cultivation aptitude. Perhaps his comprehension ability was a little lacking, and his luck was bad. The person who passed on the technique to him didn't do his best, so he ended up as a servant. In the past 10 years, Yang Chun also observed the 4 people through other people. They had been dead set on Yang Chun. Even when Chu Hong tried his best to deal with Yang Chun, the 4 people did not betray him. So, this was the reward they deserved. Thank you, young master. The 4 people almost didn't think about it. They directly bowed to the ground and paid homage to Yang Chun. Yang Chun was not only giving them benefits in cultivation, but also directly sending them to the ranks of the inner sect disciples. As long as they built the foundation, they would no longer be slaves, but the inner sect disciples of Chunyang Palace. How could such a change not make them grateful? The 4 people even secretly vowed that even if they became inner sect disciples in the future, they would still look at Yang Chun as a master. Now let's find what I need first. Yang Chun did not comment on the gratitude of the 4 people. nor did he care about their secret vow. He just smiled and urged, "When cultivating, don't try to be brave. Haste makes waste. Go." The four people no longer dared to neglect, quickly climbed up and began to be busy. In less than a day, the medicinal materials that Yang Chun needed appeared in front of him. He Lian's eyes widened, watching Yang Chen's every move and watching the flow of the flame in the profound spirit furnace. This was something Yang Chun had specifically told her to look at. As for how much she could comprehend, it would depend on her own comprehension. Qi-nourishing Dan could be refined as long as one was in the third layer of Qi refining, but not every third-grade Dan refinement master was willing to refine third revolution Qi-nourishing Dan. Yang Chen's movements were very fast, but they were also very clear, especially when he deliberately demonstrated to Lian. Even the process of refining the medicinal herbs was very clear. The technique wasn't complicated, but there was an indescribable feeling to it. Lian was immersed in it after watching for a while. The effect of the third revolution Qi nourishing pill was even stronger than that of the foundation enhancing pill. A 3-turn Qi nourishing pill was enough for Gong Sunling to consume half a day's worth of spiritual energy. Adding on the abundant spiritual energy in the immortal falling abyss, Gong Sunling did not need to worry about not having enough spiritual energy. According to Gong Sunling's 10 years in the immortal falling abyss, Yang Chun had refined more than 7,003 turn Qi nourishing pills for Gong Sunling. All the medicinal herbs needed for the Qi nourishing pill had been purchased in the market square of 2,000 miles, causing those who traded in medicinal herbs to start hoarding these low-grade medicinal herbs. In addition to the nourishing Qi Dan, Yang Chun also refined hundreds of Peiyuan Dan, which are the same as the third-grade Peiyuan Dan. Each of them could supplement spiritual power and repair injuries when they were injured. This was also a precaution. Safety was the most important issue. The belt of the fire jade boulder array that Yang Chun obtained from an unknown stalker in the Taishaman also came in handy. After Yang Chun used the Heavenly Spirit Treasure refining technique and the Earth Fiend Array sacrificial technique to refine it several times, he took the initiative to erase his divine sense. This belt, from the beginning, could resist the attack of the early stage of the foundation stage. After Yang Chen's sacrificial refining, it was comparable to a master in the middle stage of the foundation stage, always protecting the surroundings. Yang Chun did not prepare more things. First, Gong Sunling would not accept it. Second, the purpose of going to the immortal falling abyss was to gain experience. If the protection was too much, it would lose the original purpose of the experience. 2 months later, Gong Sunling received these things. When Yang Chun handed it over, Gong Sunling did not refuse, but looked at Yang Chun with a different expression. Finally, she silently put away the things, said to Yang Chun, and then directly flew to the immortal falling abyss on her sword. During the 2 months of refining the elixir, Lian followed along and learned from the beginning to the end. After sending away Gong Sunling, Yang Chun began to teach Lian how to refine the Qi-seeking pill. This kind of low-level medicinal pill completely relied on the method of controlling the fire to refine. The medicinal materials were in a mess. It was no longer suitable for Yang Chun to spend time to refine for the sect. The method of controlling the fire, Lian had been practicing for 9 years. Although there was still a big gap with Yang Chun, it was enough to meet the requirements of the Qi-seeking pill. In just a few days, Lian had mastered the refining method of the Qi-seeking pill and began to refine the Qi-seeking pill for the medicinal hall on a regular basis. At the same time, she exchanged a lot of sect contribution points and spirit stones. Galyu was still comprehending. It seemed that her cultivation base would be improved in the near future. Yang Chun did not disturb her. After communicating with everyone again, he began to retreat again. This time, Yang Chun intended to attack the foundation stage of the first with spirit power. During the time of refining the medicinal pill for Gong Sunling, in addition to the mechanical alchemy, Yang Chun's mind was not idle, but he was thinking about the possibility of adding the Panlai Divine wood to the foundation establishment pill. If others knew that Yang Chun was refining the third-grade medicinal pill while his mind was still distracted, it would definitely make countless people crazy. The first would spirit power of the Panlai Divine Wood. Yang Chun has already thought of a way to integrate it into the Foundation Establishment pill. The branches and leaves of the Divine Wood were not suitable for medicine, but suitable for refining. The most suitable part for medicine was the root. After determining this, the number of experiments that Yang Chun needed would be greatly reduced, and he only needed to experiment at a few key time points. Even if it was a failure, it would be a coveted good thing, and it would not be wasted at all. Carefully removing the roots of the 4 sections of the Panlai Divine Wood, Yang Chun began the refining of the third-grade Foundation Establishment pill. The roots of the 4 sections of the Panlai Divine Wood were added at the critical moments of the 4 alchemy. This was the possibility left after Yang Chun simulated tens of thousands of times in his mind. The 1,000-year profound Yang fruit had in fact already surpassed 1,300 years of maturity. In addition to the other supplementary herbs, all of them were good things that were over 1,000 years old. This furnace of pills, even if only slag was left, was still a rare good thing. In strict accordance with the technique of the Foundation Establishment pill, these medicinal materials were added to the profound spirit furnace, and the earth fire began to carefully refine. When all the medicinal materials began to become liquid and fuse, Yang Chun added the first root. Just after adding it, he immediately discovered a fatal problem. In a short time, the earth fire could not refine the roots of the Panlai Divine Wood. Chapter 194. Although the 5 elements of wood gave birth to fire, the level of Panlai Divine Wood was too high, and the earth core fire felt a little unattainable. Yang Chun couldn't help but be glad that he'd spent almost a year to let the profound spirit furnace absorb the sun true fire, and he could use it immediately. If it was replaced by other people, even if it was the original owner of this sun true fire, Helene Yun, the sun true fire would directly burn the Panlai Divine Wood to the point that there was no residue left. But Yang Chun had the sun true fire in his previous life, and his familiarity with this kind of flame was more thorough than all the people in the mortal world combined. Just a trace of the extremely subtle fire line directly penetrated into the small root of the Panlai Divine Wood. While distracting to control the melting medicinal liquid, he was attentively controlling this trace of fire to refine the root. Fortunately, Yang Chun's current spiritual awareness was extremely powerful, and the 3 purities secret art may not only bring about the strength of the spiritual awareness, but more so that Yang Chun could be distracted, so that he could easily do this. After a lot of time, the small root was finally refined and integrated into the medicinal liquid of the Foundation Establishment pill. After thousands of simulations, there were no mistakes, and the medicinal liquid changed steadily until a month later, it successfully turned into a light green medicinal pill. The 3 Revolutions Foundation Establishment pill, but it was slightly different from the ordinary Foundation Establishment pill. There was a very clear taste of the wood attribute spiritual power in it. This was the first medicinal pill of Yang Chun's experiment. It was a success, but Yang Chun still needed to compare it with several other kinds to see which one had the best effect. Soon, 4 months passed in a hurry, and there were 4 green 3 Revolutions Foundation Establishment pills in Yang Chun's merit ring. Now, these 4 medicinal pills were lined up and placed in front of Yang Chun. The color changed from light green to dark green, which clearly showed the depth of the wood attribute spiritual power. For different times to join, there would be 4 different results. However, what was amazing was that Yang Chun refined the 4 Foundation Establishment pills only 4 times. In other words, his success rate in refining the 3rd Revolution Foundation building pill was 100%. Refining a building foundation dam was not too difficult for a senior alchemist, but for a 3rd-grade alchemist, it was not possible to succeed every time. What Yang Chun did was enough to make Deng Ya and Zhu Peng, who were the nascent soul realm, stronger than them. His spiritual awareness explored the 4 medicinal pills. Yang Chun needed to judge the difference in the spiritual power of these medicinal pills. However, when his divine sense wrapped around the 4 elixirs, his consciousness suddenly appeared in his sea of consciousness, and in front of him, 4 huge green balls appeared. Yang Chun didn't expect that he would appear in his sea of consciousness at this moment. However, when he saw the 4 giant balls, he couldn't help but open his mouth wide. Where were these 4 giant balls? They were clearly 4 medicinal pills, enlarged to such a degree that the size of each one seemed to be several times larger than Yang Chun. What surprised Yang Chun even more was that he could easily see any corner and any gap in these 4 medicinal pills. The structure, composition, spiritual power distribution of the 4 medicinal pills, and even some flaws in the medicinal pills, at this moment, in the eyes of Yang Chun, there were no secrets, and they were completely presented in front of Yang Chun. Is this the effect of the 3 purities secret art? Yang Chun was not sure what was the reason for this. His sea of consciousness had become like this, and he was a little unable to understand it. Although he was a great principal golden immortal in his previous life, he was only a bottom great principal golden immortal. His sea of consciousness was just a simple sea of consciousness. There was nothing in it, not to mention that it was divided into levels, and he could even see the composition of these medicinal pills. But in any case, this was not a bad thing for Yang Chun. Was there anything better for an alchemist than to be able to so clearly analyze the composition structure of the medicinal pills, the distribution of spiritual power, and even find the flaws in the refining of the medicinal pills? This was simply a good thing tailor-made for Yang Chun. It could even make all the alchemists crazy jealous and want to snatch this ability. Why did such a sea of consciousness appear? Yang Chun's spiritual awareness gave up immediately analyzing the advantages and disadvantages of the 4 medicinal pills and immediately withdrew from the sea of consciousness. The first thing he did was to recite the content of the 3 purities secret art. It must be known that the 3 purities secret art was the most likely cause of this. Soon Yang Chun discovered the reason. The 3 purities secret art could continuously increase the spiritual awareness of a cultivator, which was more powerful than any cultivation method of spiritual awareness. However, most cultivators would split their spiritual awareness after cultivating for a period of time. When the increase of their spiritual awareness was higher than their own realm by a great realm, their spiritual awareness would split. The splitting of the spiritual awareness also meant that there would be a second primordial spirit, but usually this situation would only appear at least in the Yuanying stage. Yang Chun had reached this realm early because the murderous aura of the immortal beheading was refined into a huge spiritual awareness by the 3 purities secret art. However, because his cultivation base was too low, he had never split his spiritual awareness into a second primordial spirit. Now that his spiritual awareness has reached the peak of the Jidan stage, it was almost 2 realms higher than Yang Chun's early foundation stage cultivation base. So there was this situation that was not in the records of the 3 purities secret art. This was an unexpected surprise that led to a qualitative change by quantitative change, and it also meant that Yang Chun could finally cultivate the 3rd layer of the 3 purities secret art. Even if the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord stood in front of Yang Chun, he couldn't help but admire Yang Chun's unique opportunity. Since it was a good thing, Yang Chun certainly did not hesitate to cultivate the 3rd layer of the 3 purities secret art. The feeling of his spiritual awareness being tempered made Yang Chun feel both a little pain and an addictive feeling of comfort. Just once, Yang Chun could find that his sea of consciousness had become more and more refined. It was really the cultivation method of the Elderly Lord. It was powerful to the extreme. The 4 medicinal pills were always in front of him, but they never entered the sea of consciousness. What Yang Chun saw in the sea of consciousness was only the reflection of the medicinal pills in the sea of consciousness under the scan of the spiritual awareness. After entering the sea of consciousness again, Yang Chun had already figured out the way to use it. The size of the medicinal pills could be easily changed according to Yang Chun's will, making it easier for him to see the structure inside. In Yang Chun's sea of consciousness, the 4 medicinal pills were analyzed thoroughly by Yang Chun to the extreme. When there was a small problem with the heat, when the timing of adding medicinal materials was lacking, In the medicinal pills that Yang Chun used to think were perfect, he found no less than dozens of imperfections. Naturally, the most suitable medicinal pill was also found by Yang Chun. However, this medicinal pill was not for Yang Chun to take immediately, but according to the refining method of this medicinal pill, the small root of the Panlai Divine wood was replaced with a main root to refine. Chapter 195. A small section of thin roots and a main root were two completely different concepts. This kind of common sense, even an ordinary person could distinguish it. Of course, the cultivators were more aware of the differences in the spiritual power contained in it, as well as the differences in the larger functions. The 4 medicinal pills of Yang Chun at the beginning were just experimental products, and the real medicinal pills refined for himself were still behind. This time, Yang Chun's attitude was more serious, and even the refining time was at least twice as long. Of course, the reason for the long time was that refining the main root of the Panlai Divine wood was much more difficult than refining a small section of the small roots. This step alone took Yang Chun more than a month's time. And this was the result of Yang Chun fully mobilizing the Sun True Fire, and the strength of the main root could be seen. The choice was the best profound Yang fruit, the best auxiliary medicine, the thickest main root in the Panlai Divine wood forest, and this alone consumed a quarter of the spiritual power of the medicine garden to supplement. Compared with the needs of Yang Chun's foundation stage, it was simply a waste. In 2 months, the final product was a green pill with 3 clear pill marks on it, and it also formed a miniature Panlai Divine wood medicinal pill, the 3rd grade Divine wood foundation establishment pill. The small flaws in the previous alchemy process, under the careful control of Yang Chun, were repaired a lot and became more and more perfect. Put there, just the pill chi that lingered around the medicinal pill and did not disperse made people see the excellence of this medicinal pill at a glance. After making enough preparations again, Yang Chun sent the perfect medicinal pill to his mouth. The Longan-sized medicinal pill melted in his mouth, and in an instant it turned into a familiar aura of the Panlai Divine wood that Yang Chun was familiar with, and rushed straight into Yang Chun's lungs. In the meridians, the spirit power of the Panlai Divine would domineeringly merged into Yang Chun's first with spirit power, and then unceremoniously assimilated the first with spirit power in Yang Chun's body. This process was not easier than Yang Chun condensing the 3rd fire spirit power with the Sun True Fire. Every transformation of spiritual power consumed a huge amount of spiritual power, and this spiritual power was completely provided by the spiritual power generated by Yang Chun's Yin-Yang 5-element secret art and the 3rd grade foundation establishment pill. The Yin-Yang 5-element secret art was running wildly, making up for Yang Chun's first wood spirit power assimilated by the Panlai Divine wood. After the aura of the Panlai Divine wood began to assimilate enough of the first wood spirit power, Yang Chun began to compete for control with the aura of the Panlai Divine wood. To put it simply, Yang Chun used a huge amount of spiritual power to dilute and assimilate the aura of the Panlai Divine wood that was condensed to the extreme, and then began to absorb and refine these auras, becoming part of his own Yin-Yang 5-element secret art. It was also a painstaking effort. Yang Chun extracted a trace of the Panlai Divine wood aura that was entrenched in his body, then absorbed and refined it, and at the same time let his meridians adapt to this pure to the extreme first with spirit power. This process lasted for a full 2 months. When the last trace of the Panlai Divine with spirit power completely turned into Yang Chun's first with spirit power, Yang Chun once again entered the state of communicating with heaven and earth. This was the 3rd time that Yang Chun had entered this state in this life. The overwhelming spiritual power gathered from all directions into Yang Chun's body, and Yang Chun's first with spirit power that had just been refined to the extreme was once again supplemented to a stunning level. The process lasted for half an hour. In the ordinary foundation stage, the process of communicating with heaven and earth was completed in just a short moment, but Yang Chun had set a new record this time. The emergence of this vision even made the palace master of Chunyang Palace, who happened to be in the fierce sun courtyard, give up his cultivation, and stand outside the room where Yang Chen retreated. Of course, the palace master would not easily interrupt Yang Chen's cultivation, nor would he do anything to interfere with it. Also coming here, because of the vision here, was Yang Chen's master, Gao Yu. The foundation stage of the first wood spirit power drove the other attributes of the spiritual power in Yang Chen's body to improve wildly. The long-term process of communicating with heaven and earth directly caused the spiritual power in Yang Chen's body to rush to the apex of the peak qi refining stage in just half an hour, and then broke through the critical point. As a result, Yang Chen had to begin to welcome his remaining 7 spiritual powers and build his foundation at the same time. This was a crazy and surprising process. After half an hour of the first wood spirit power communicating with heaven and earth, a larger-scale heaven and earth essence qi riot began to be produced in the retreat room of Yang Chen in the Fierce Sun Courtyard. Even when the Jidan stage master condensed his Dan, it did not cause such a big movement. The heaven and earth spiritual power within 100 miles of the Fierce Sun Courtyard seemed to have encountered a super black hole and rushed to the Fierce Sun Courtyard. So many people who were cultivating in the Chunyang Palace found the abnormality here. Several elder-level characters immediately flew into the air and instantly arrived at the Fierce Sun Courtyard. But immediately they found the palace master standing outside Yang Chen's retreat room. Everyone tacitly did not make a sound and quietly landed behind the palace master. These elders were very clear about how many people lived in the Fierce Sun Courtyard. Now, almost everyone except Yang Chen and Gong Sunling had already stood on this side. Gong Sunling had already set off to the Immortal falling abyss. So who was inside? These elders did not need to explore with their spiritual awareness to know. The huge heaven and earth spiritual power directly formed a huge vortex over Yang Chen's room, and the lower end of the vortex was Yang Chen. Yang Chen's body at this moment was like a huge sponge, madly absorbing the spiritual power, and then it was refined and purified by the yin and yang 5 elements secret art in his own body, becoming a part of his own spiritual power. Yang Chen's consciousness had appeared in his own sea of consciousness at this moment. The original sea of consciousness only had a long river of blood, a sun in the sky, and the magma under the long river, but now there was a big tree. The roots of the big tree were firmly rooted on the edge of the long river of blood. The long roots even directly extended into the magma below, and the huge canopy was just next to the red sun in the sky. The thick trunk stood upright, forming a bridge connecting heaven and earth. The outline of the sea of consciousness had expanded to the size of 5 fierce sun courtyards, and it definitely had a radius of hundreds of acres. Yang Chen stood in the middle and could even feel the emptiness. The long river of blood also became longer, crossing the entire sea of consciousness, dividing the sea of consciousness into 2 parts. What happened? The people outside Yang Chen's room looked at the continuous phenomenon of the heaven and earth spiritual power and could not help but stare at each other. No one knew what had happened, but everyone had a consensus that this was definitely a good thing. Chapter 196. The communication between heaven and earth lasted for an hour and a half, but none of the onlookers waiting were impatient. Several of Yang Chen's fellow apprentices and those servants were curious about what happened. At the same time, they also took advantage of the opportunity of the crazy concentration of spiritual power here to cultivate a little. The effect was many times better than usual. As for the Chunyang Palace Master, several Yuanying stage elders, and Gao Yu, they were guessing what happened to Yang Chen that would cause such a situation. However, this situation was very familiar to everyone, and they had all experienced it. This was clearly the scene of communicating with heaven and earth during the foundation stage. But at that time, no one had such a big movement as Yang Chen, and no one had lasted as long as Yang Chen. Everyone waited like this, thinking and waiting. The turbulence of the spiritual power of heaven and earth finally began to ease and slowly stopped. Everyone was relieved and knew that they had reached the final juncture. The palace master suddenly remembered what Su Qingxin once said to him. It seemed that at the heaven stairway gathering, Yang Chun said that he had cultivated the other 5 elements of spiritual power. It was said that it was to feel what the other spiritual power felt like. Moreover, the palace master himself also clearly felt that in addition to the fire attribute spiritual power in Yang Chen's body, there were indeed other attributes of spiritual power. However, at that time, the palace master also listened to Su Qingxin's words and knew that Yang Chen had this experience, and he did make the royal fire like water and royal fire like earth techniques in front of Su Qingxin, so he did not pay much attention to it at that time. However, now that he was communicating with heaven and earth for such a long time, he thought of a possibility. Yang Chen would not have succeeded in building all the 5 attributes of spiritual power, right? When he thought of this, the palace master himself was shocked. At the same time, he cultivated 5 kinds of spiritual power and built his foundation at the same time. How could this be described as a genius? It was more like calling him a monster. How was this possible? If he thought that the master of the Yuanying stage had built his foundation with other attributes of spiritual power, the palace master would believe it, but a disciple who had just built his foundation with fire attribute actually built his foundation with all 5 elements of spiritual power. No matter how strong Yang Chen was, where did he get the time to cultivate? It must be known that Yang Chen's cultivation in the 9 Earth Mountain Villa was famous for being lazy. Even in the Ardent Sun courtyard, if it wasn't for these 2 seclusion sessions, he would be very carefree every day. How is it possible for all 5 elements of spiritual power to be at the foundation establishment stage? But if that wasn't the case, how could the current situation be explained? Palace Master Zhang Jiao couldn't understand, but fortunately, Yang Chen would finish it soon. When he asked, wouldn't all the truth be revealed? The consequence of communicating with heaven and earth was that Yang Chen's yin-yang 5 elemental arts once again entered a balanced state. This was the most comfortable state for Yang Chen, and also the state with the strongest combat power. Originally, he planned to use the profound spirit furnace and the sword sheath with the yin-yang 5-element secret art to complete all the sacrificial refining of the celestial spirit treasure refining secret art and the earth fiend sacrificial formation secret art. But Yang Chen soon found that there were a lot of people standing at his door. Among them were the head of the palace and his master. Yang Chen also had to open the door immediately. Greetings, master. Greetings, palace master. Greetings, elders. As soon as he went out, Yang Chen had no other action except to pay homage to these seniors. Everyone has been patiently waiting for him to pay homage to them, and then they began to observe Yang Chen carefully. Yang Chen's yin-yang 5-element secret art was now balanced again, and naturally there was a kind of heroic and restrained temperament. It seemed to be a return to nature, but including Gao Yu, they could feel the powerful spiritual power of the 5 elements that flowed silently in Yang Chen's body. Perhaps this spiritual power was not worth their attention in front of these masters, but they had already estimated the current combat power of Yang Chen. Yang Chen, who had just reached the foundation stage and was still in the first layer of the foundation stage, could at least deal with 10 guys in the same realm as him at the same time, and this was still a conservative estimate. It was even very likely that the middle stage of the foundation stage was not necessarily the opponent of Yang Chen. Perhaps only the people in the advanced or peak stage of the foundation stage could fight with Yang Chen. A disciple in the foundation stage had once again surprised them. The head of the palace didn't know what to say, but Gao Yu cared about her apprentice and couldn't help but ask in front of everyone, Yang Chen, what was the matter with your movement just now? Foundation stage? Yes, master, Yang Chen replied respectfully, and for a moment, he had already figured out how to deal with these elders in front of him. You cultivate this spiritual power of the 5 elements at the same time. Aren't you afraid of not distinguishing between the primary and secondary? Gao Yu's eyebrows almost became a knot. Since the beginning of the cultivator, she had never heard of a successful cultivator who cultivated the 5 elements. There were cultivators, but the final result was very miserable. Everyone knew the benefits of specialization, like Yang Chen. It was unique. This disciple still specializes in the fire attribute, but the other 5 elements of spiritual power automatically upgraded to the foundation stage, This disciple did not expect it. Yang Chun still respectfully answered his master's questions and also solved the doubts of other elders. You have not specialized in other spiritual power. How can you reach the foundation stage? Gao Yu asked, puzzled. Similarly, this was also the question of the palace master and the elders. Gao Yu asked for them, and it was better for them to lose their manners on the spot. This disciple accidentally refined a foundation stage pill and wanted to try the effect. As a result, it became like this. Yang Chun was still honest to answer. What kind of foundation stage pill? The head of the palace asked in front of Gao Yu this time. As the palace master, he immediately realized the extraordinariness of this. This is the medicinal pill refined by this disciple. Please taste it. Yang Chun from the merit ring took the best foundation stage pill with both hands and sent it to the front of the head of the palace. 3-grade foundation stage pill. When the palace master took it, he immediately found the extraordinariness of the medicinal pill and exclaimed on the spot. The scream of the palace master made several Yuanying stage elders no longer care about Fengyi. All of them gathered around, one by one looking at the foundation stage pill in the hands of the palace master. They could not wait to grab it and observe it carefully. The 3 obvious pill marks clearly indicated the grade of the medicinal pill. There is no doubt that this was a 3rd-grade medicinal pill, but was there a green one for the foundation stage pill? What a strong wood spiritual power. What is this? The palace master who held it in his hand immediately felt the wood spiritual power contained in the medicinal pill and whispered, Fusong wood. Qingyang wood? No, it's not so strong as this. Penglai divine wood? Boom! Several elders no longer had the reservation of a Yuanying stage ancestor. Like an outbreak, they all screamed out loud. Chapter 197. Penglai divine wood, this almost legendary thing, would actually appear in a medicinal pill? How is this possible? Several Yuanying stage elders could not wait to grab the medicinal pill to see what it was, but due to the identity of the head of the palace, they did not do it so much, but they had already surrounded the head of the palace. Foundation establishment pill. Even if it was the 3rd-grade foundation establishment pill, for these Yuanying stage masters, the significance was not very great. They had already built the foundation for many years. At most, Yang Chun could refine the 3rd-grade foundation establishment pill. He could be regarded as a very talented alchemy disciple in the sect, and he would be vigorously cultivated. But Penglai divine wood was different. It was something that could refine the most powerful flying sword. If it happened to be a wood cultivator, it was simply one of the best magic weapons in the mortal world. However, this kind of thing was too precious. Even the palace master could not determine that the aura on this medicinal pill was Penglai divine wood. He had only ruled out a few high-grade wood-type materials and came to this conclusion. After the head of the palace looked at it, the medicinal pill was passed in the hands of a group of Yuanying stage elders. After everyone carefully identified it one by one, no one could be sure that the pure wood attribute aura was not the legendary Penglai divine wood. Yang Chun, what kind of material is the wood aura in it? After everyone had seen it, the palace master motioned everyone to come to the meeting hall of the Fierce Sun courtyard. It was really inappropriate for the elders to stand in the small courtyard of Yang Chun. After sitting down, the palace master asked, I don't know. Yang Chun directly told a lie with his eyes open. I just happened to encounter a small piece of wood, which has a strong wood spirit power. So I try to refine this with spirit power into the foundation establishment pill. I did not expect it to succeed in one try. What about the wooden strip? The palace master asked a little eagerly, and then immediately realized his gaffe, slowed down, and then said, Is there anything else? Although the other Yuanying stage elders did not speak, they were also looking forward to Meng Han, waiting for his affirmative answer. That's all we have left. Yang Qin was going to say no, but he changed his mind. He took out a finger-thick branch of the Penglai divine wood from the medicine garden, and then put it in the hands of the head of the palace. There is a finger-sized one broken. I used it to refine medicine. This. Palace Master Zhang Jiao took the green branch and felt the wood attribute spiritual power that was stronger than the medicinal pill. His fingers even began to tremble. Several elders also focused their eyes on the hands of the palace master for the first time. and they refused to move their eyes away. Even if he held it in his hand, the head of the palace was still not sure that this was the Panglai divine wood. He needed everyone to observe and identify it before he could give an answer. After all, this kind of thing was a legend. How many people had seen it with their own eyes? Even the old mountain god was deceived, let alone mortals like the head of the palace. The small branch was passed in the hands of several elders, but the eyes of the head of the palace had shifted from the Panglai divine wood to the 3 grades foundation establishment pill in front of him. Or it could not simply be called the 3 grades foundation establishment pill, but it should be called the 3 grades divine wood foundation establishment pill. 3 grades foundation establishment pill. Looking up, the palace master looked at Yang Chun, and his lips seemed to be a little dry. Is this refined by you? It was refined by this disciple. Yang Chun certainly would not deny it. This was the guarantee of his own status in Chunyang Palace. How could he not recognize it? The head of the palace was the head of the palace. After the excitement of getting the Panglai divine wood branch, he immediately began to think about the affairs of Chunyang Palace. And what could make him happier than a potential disciple who could refine the 3 grades foundation establishment pill and could refine the Panglai divine wood? This was not counting the fact that after Yang Chun took the 3 grades divine wood foundation establishment pill, he actually built the foundation of all the 5 elements of spiritual power. Such a powerful medicinal pill, there was no need for more. If Yang Chun prepared one for every outer sect disciple, what kind of scene would Chunyang Palace be? Even Zhu Chuntao, the veteran 3rd grade alchemist master of the Jidan stage, was not sure that he could successfully refine the 3 grades foundation establishment pill. The Qi-seeking pill had more than doubled the number of outer sect disciples in Chunyang Palace, and the news of the successful refining of the heaven-seizing pill had made the number of new disciples received by Chunyang Palace several times more this year. Now, the 3 grades foundation establishment pill could almost certainly let the people at the peak of the Qi refining stage build the foundation. All of this was related to Yang Chun. Could it be that Yang Chun was the deputy general of Chunyang Palace? It had to be said that Yang Chun's appearance had indeed confirmed this fact. The earth vein of the fierce sun courtyard, the Panglai divine wood, the heaven ladder to the top, and the 200,000 5-element spirit essence, any one of them, if placed on a disciple in the foundation establishment stage, would be unbelievable, but these were all facts that had already happened. The more he thought about what happened to Yang Chun, the more satisfied the palace master felt, and at the same time, he hated Chu Heng, who suppressed Yang Chun more. For Liang Xiaoming of the Bright Moon Palace, there was also a little more dissatisfaction. How long does it take you to refine this kind of 3 grades foundation establishment pill? The palace master picked up the pill again and looked at it repeatedly in his hand. At this time, he found that in addition to the wood's spiritual power in the pill, there was also a very large spiritual power. This spiritual power was so powerful that even the palace master was a little surprised. The 1,000-year-old mysterious yang fruit was a pill refined by the 3 grades, and all the auxiliary medicines were more than 1,000 years old. Of course, it was full of frightening spiritual power. But the palace master did not know and just attributed it to the 3 grades foundation establishment pill. This kind of pill containing the wood's spiritual power will take at least 8 months. Yang Chun played a trick and doubled the number. If it is a simple foundation establishment pill, it will also take 4 months. Yes. The palace master listened to Yang Chun's answer and nodded. This time was not very outrageous, but it was also unacceptable. After thinking about it, the palace master asked another related question. What if it is a 2nd grades foundation establishment pill? That's simple. Yang Chun did not hide anything on this and honestly replied, 1 month is enough. After listening to Yang Chun's answer, the palace master hesitated for a long time and did not speak, but his eyes looked at the Panglai divine wood that was exchanged back and forth between several elders. Yang Chun. After a long time, the palace master seemed to have figured out something and called Yang Chun. This disciple is here. Yang Chun quickly promised. This branch, hand it over to the sect. Are you willing? Looking at the branch of the Panglai divine wood, the palace master used a tentative tone, completely discussing the tone. This disciple is willing. Yang Chen replied directly without thinking. Since it was taken out, it was to be handed over to the sect. Yang Chen would not refuse. Chapter 198. As for this medicinal pill, the palace master held Yang Chen's 3 grades divine wood foundation establishment pill with 2 fingers. He thought about it and said, "Also give it to the sect and let Hall Master Zhu study it." Yes. Yang Chen did not have any dissatisfaction at all. He took it out, but did not think about taking it back. If he didn't come up with some real materials, how could Chunyang Palace pay more and more attention to himself? The sect will not accept your things for nothing. The palace master looked at Yang Chen's eyes and slowly asked, "If you have any requirements, just put them forward. If the sect can meet them, it will never be stingy." Several elders had stopped observing the Palai divine wood and were all listening to the words of the palace master and Yang Chen. When the palace master proposed to let Yang Chen make a request, none of the elders had any objection. Obviously, the things that Yang Chen took out this time were enough to make these elders. Even Elder Lin, who had the most opinions on Yang Chen, had nothing to say. There were disputes within the sect, but this did not mean that everyone would give up the development of the sect because of this. A genius disciple like Yang Chen had constantly brought them surprises. Now, even the legendary Palai divine wood was selflessly taken out. If they had any opinions, it would be purely a needle in a needle. Several elders could cultivate to the Yuanying stage. If they couldn't even see this, then they would not be elders. Moreover, from the possibility that Yang Chen might help them one day refine the heaven-seizing pill, there would be no opinion. Whether it was public or private, there was no reason to object. This disciple wants to know, the last time the palace master said that he wanted to negotiate with the Taishaman, what was the result? Yang Chen did not make a request, but asked a question first. This question was closely related to Yang Chen, because Li Qingqian of the Taishaman and Chu Heng found people to kill Yang Chen. At that time, the law enforcement hall palace master was furious and asked Su Qingxin to negotiate. The Taishaman apologized to you and Chunyang Palace for the heaven stairway. The palace master did not expect Yang Chen to ask this. He was stunned for a moment before replying, "The Taishaman have removed Cheng Wenkai from all duties in the sect and voluntarily compensated Chunyang Palace with the 2 quotas for the heaven stairway gathering next year. In addition, for the 19 Jidan stage masters who plotted against you when you were climbing the heaven stairway, all the sects involved have also compensated." The palace mistress attached great importance to this matter, so she was very clear about the details. There's a flying sword, 16 different kinds of pills, an alchemy furnace, and a piece of undying wood. The palace master attached great importance to this matter, so the details were very clear. There's a flying sword, 16 kinds of medicinal pills, an alchemy furnace, and a piece of immortal wood. I received a reply not long ago. You are still in retreat, so the sect agreed on your behalf. As for Li Qingqian sending people to kill you, the palace master paused and seemed to want Yang Chen to be mentally prepared. The Taishaman mean that this is a personal grievance between you and Li Qingqian. The Taishaman will not come forward to protect you. You can find Li Qingqian at any time to solve this personal grievance, and the 2 sect will not interfere. Are you satisfied with this? Satisfied? Yang Chen was certainly satisfied. The Taishaman not only had to bear the loss of 4 Jidan stage masters, but also had to apologize and give up the quota. This kind of apology could be seen by the whole world. How could Yang Chen not be satisfied? Even if Yang Chen could not get any substantial benefits, Yang Chen was also very satisfied, not to mention that there were still a lot of things to get. A small Qinkuan bag appeared in the hands of the palace master. It was obviously filled with the compensation, but he did not directly hand it to Yang Chen. Instead, he asked, "The sect took your things. Naturally, they will not take it in vain. What conditions do you want?" "I will follow the arrangement of the palace master." Yang Chen immediately retreated and left everything to the palace master to decide. Obviously, if the palace master did not come up with some enough benefits, his own master ancestor, Gao Yu's master, Elder Wang Yong, would not agree. This also showed that he was not greedy for rewards and left a better impression on the upper echelons of the sect. The polite divine wood is really rare. In that case, I will give you a few choices. The palace master did not push Yang Chun. He was used to giving orders and had his own bearing. After a little thought, he immediately had a solution. You are a fire cultivator. The pure yang true fire collected by the Chunyang Palace for generations cannot be passed on to outsiders except for the sect master or the elders. I will grant you the identity of a true disciple and give you the pure yang true fire. Or, I have a black flame crystal stone in the Chunyang Palace. Although it is not as precious as the Punlai divine wood, it is also a fire attribute treasure. It is the best material for refining the flying sword. The insufficient part can be made up with spirit stones. You can choose these two. Hearing the words of the palace master, Yang Chun was overjoyed. The palace master even allowed him to choose between the pure yang true fire and the black flame crystal. For Yang Chun, did he still need to consider? This disciple chooses the pure yang true fire, almost without thinking about it. Yang Chun chose the pure yang true fire. It must be known that this was a higher level of fire than the true sun fire. Only the core fire cultivators of the Chunyang Palace had a chance to get involved, and only a chance. The pure yang true fire was overbearing. Even the masters of the Yuanying stage were not necessarily able to absorb and refine it. In the memory of Yang Chun in his previous life, there was almost no pure yang true fire in the mortal world and the spiritual world. Only some fire cultivators in the immortal world would occasionally have a few. It was also rare and very rare. In the Chunyang Palace, only the founder had the pure yang true fire, which was also the origin of the name of the Chunyang Palace. No disciple of the younger generation had refined it. Later, the Chunyang Palace was destroyed, and the fire of the pure yang true fire was destroyed by the palace master at the last moment. From then on, there was no pure yang true fire in the mortal world. In his previous life, Yang Chun was not qualified to touch the pure yang true fire. Even if he was qualified, he did not have the strength to refine it. But in this life, this opportunity was placed in front of him, which made Yang Chun overjoyed. You have to think about it. The palace master seemed to have a glimmer of hope for Yang Chun. After the founder, no one had refined the pure yang true fire. In the Chunyang Palace, it had almost become a decoration. Yang Chun's level of fire control was obvious to all. Maybe he could inherit the pure yang true fire and develop the pure yang great way. Looking forward to it in his heart, the palace master still reminded Yang Chun, pure yang true fire may not be able to refine it until you ascend. As long as you reach the Jidan realm, you can refine it. Do you still want to choose the pure yang true fire? This disciple chooses the pure yang true fire. Yang Chun replied firmly again, regardless of the elder's raised eyebrows and the anxious eyes of his master Gao Yu. Good. The palace master stared at Yang Chun for a while. After confirming that Yang Chun was not joking, he turned his hand, and a square transparent box appeared in his hand. The box was covered with various talisman formations. Through the transparent box, a dazzling white light group filled the whole box, constantly flashing.